Majority Report with Sam Seder.
The destiny of America is always safer in the hands of the people than in the conference rooms of any elite.
Sam Seder.
They are unanimous in their hate for me, and I welcome their hatred.
We must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
The Majority Report with Sam Seder.
Ever get the feeling you've been cheated?
It is Monday, August 30th, 2021. My name is Sam Seder. This is the 5-time award-winning Majority Report. We are broadcasting live steps from the industrially ravaged Gowanus Canal in the heartland of America, downtown Brooklyn, USA. On the program today, amidst a COVID surge in the wake of Hurricane Ida, New Orleans loses power. We will get a live report from Dr. MarkAlain Dery in New Orleans, infectious disease physician and epidemiologist at AccessHealth, Louisiana, host of the Daily Noise Filter podcast. Also on the program today, U.S. nears peak COVID hospitalizations as the EU restricts U.S. travelers again. Florida court quashes Governor DeSantis's mask mandate ban, allows schools to impose mask mandates. Meanwhile, U.S. strikes ISIS in Afghanistan, reportedly killing at least 9 civilians, 6 of whom were children. The Afghan evacuation flights continue. Over 240,000 Afghans have been evacuated to 11 other countries. Meanwhile, Democrats scramble to revive the eviction moratorium, but it's too little, too late. Could impact up to 4 million tenants within 2 months. Also, we are a week out from up to 8 million people losing unemployment insurance. Providers and insurers line up to fight the Democratic Medicare expansion. And in the wake of the Remain in Mexico and eviction moratorium rulings, the Supreme Court's shadow docket gets a little more scrutiny. Sirhan, convicted of killing Robert F. Kennedy, granted the first phase of parole. All this and more on today's Majority Report. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining us. I am back from vacation. Emma Vigeland did a great job in my absence. Thank you, Emma.
You're welcome, Sam.
I also picked up this habit of talking in a staccato cadence, which, of course...
Where did you learn that?
I just picked it up on vacation.
Ah, yeah. Well, did you point out your suntan yet?
Do I need to? No.
It speaks for itself, I guess.
Yeah, got a little time on the beach. Got some rest. Had the kids. So it wasn't exactly the most restful thing, but it was enjoyable. We had fun. Back at it, and to a lot of really disturbing news, not the least of which is happening down in New Orleans. And we will be talking to Dr. MarkAlain Dery in a few moments, who at this point, I think he is in either the city hall or in the convention center. And they're still dealing with basically a citywide power outage and an inability to evacuate patients in these hospitals there. We will talk more with him in a moment. Meanwhile, the evacuation continues in Afghanistan. I mentioned 240,000 people have been, Afghans have been evacuated to 11 different countries. The United States is continuing our evacuation flights at least until tomorrow. Supposedly we are going to wrap it up then. And of course there are, it's hard to sort of get a sense of whether there are people who think it's possible that we could stay in Afghanistan, or that there is people, there are warmongers out there who are trying to punish and make an example and set a precedent that you can't pull out of a 20-year war.
Well, they're not mutually exclusive.
And
right?
they're not mutually exclusive. It's sort of a twofer. Here is, let's just look at some of this as, it's upsetting. But frankly, this has been going on for 20 years. And we talk about the reports of what's going to happen, particularly in regards to women, but broadly speaking, Afghan citizens in Kabul under Taliban rule. Very often, we get very little reports of Afghans living in rural areas who have been suffering through 20 years of and prior to that, civil war, but 20 years of a war between Americans and the Taliban, and have been, and as well as all of the other sort of militia groups in Afghanistan, and the periodic drone strikes, bombings that end up killing civilians. And this weekend, there was a reminder of that that we don't generally see, because this one was in Kabul and it got a little bit more attention. Not necessarily confirmed by any outside agencies, although it's being widely reported that a strike in Kabul killed at least 9 civilians, 6 of whom were children. Here is some footage of the funeral that took place in the wake of that drone strike, ostensibly to head off a suicide bomber, an ISIS suicide bomber.
I'm here right now at the funerals of 10 civilians who were killed, including 7 children, in what is believed to have been a U.S. drone strike yesterday. It's horrific. This was supposed to have been an airstrike against ISIS-K suicide bombers, but instead the victims appear to have been a family that had nothing to do with it. It's unclear, so we're being careful at the moment in terms of that, just to make sure that it's the same strike that we're talking about. But if it is, that is just a massive indictment of this war, as it ends. And it ends as it began, with civilians bearing the brunt of it, as always.
That is a video comes from Niba Boulos. He is a staff foreign correspondent in the Middle East for the Los Angeles Times. And so corrected, it was 10 civilians and 7 children.
Well, it's conflicting reports. That's what Washington Post is reporting. And I think what you read was, it's not exactly clear at this point, but multiple children dead.
And this has been the dynamic, except for minus the attention that has been going on for over, for decades.
And sometimes the funerals would be hit too.
Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, is this not just a crystallization of the entire war on terror, right? There was a suicide bomber at the Kabul airport by ISIS-K. A number of U.S. officials, including H.R. McMaster, try to say, well, maybe ISIS-K is working with the Taliban, even though they're arch rivals. So there's that desire to connect these two rival groups and say they're working together. And then we respond with a drone strike that then kills more civilians. Like, that is the entire war on terror encapsulated into a series of chain events and reactions that happened within days of one another.
It's fascinating, too, to hear that ISIS-K working with the Taliban, they're rivals, but it's also exactly what we heard that justified the invasion of Iraq. Mm-hmm. Al-Qaeda, which well, there was connection between Al-Qaeda and Iran, although also rivals. Al-Qaeda and Saddam Hussein, also rivals. And we just get sucked deeper into this, and civilians who pay the price. Here is Chris Murphy on with Jake Tapper on CNN, and again, there is a lot of reporting that comes out of Kabul, but very little that comes out from the rest of the country, where people were just literally dying for the strikes to end. But here is Chris Murphy on with Jake Tapper.
What happens to the women and girls of Afghanistan? I mean, there are already anecdotal reports of Taliban fighters grabbing 14-year-old girls, and I mean, I would call it a forced marriage, but it's not a marriage. It's forced rape and slavery. I mean, what happens to these girls?
It's part of the reason why we were there for 20 years, right? We were in the business of trying to stand up an Afghan government that would be able to protect those girls. And in the end, the Afghan government and the security forces decided not to fight for them. The question is, should we have stayed there forever in order to protect those advances in part of the country? Remember, the Taliban, by the time 2021 rolled around, already controlled more than half of the country. It's a tough question, Jake, but I think if you ask my constituents, they were not necessarily willing to sacrifice another 20 years of American blood and treasure as to the question of who controls Afghanistan. I know that's a really hard conversation, but there are really awful despotic regimes all around the world. And the United States does not make the decision to send our troops into every single one when we have an issue with the human rights decisions of a particular foreign regime.
Well, often there are allies.
Yeah.
Senator Murphy.
Well, there you
Jake
go.
Tapper. I mean, exactly the point.
He kind of stumbled onto that one.
Right. I mean, that was, I think I understand why a U.S. politician sort of uses the lens and the perspective of exclusively of his constituents and the treasure and blood that we spill of ours, and sort of only implies that there's also a price that are paid by civilians around the country. But at the very least, that's a fairly nuanced conversation, and to end it on the right note, it seems to me, where it's very hard to make a moral argument for continuance our occupation there after 20 years. All right, we're going to take a quick break. We'll be back in just a moment, and we'll be speaking to MarkAlain Dery in just a moment. Folks, we got two sponsors. Just going to change course here for a moment. Two sponsors for today's program. One is a site that I've used many times, givewell.org. Many people, particularly towards the end of the year, but particularly amongst times like these, are looking for a good charity to give to. GiveWell.org has helped over 50,000 donors find places where their donations can save or improve the lives the most. GiveWell's recommended charities have rigorous academic independent studies of the cost effectiveness of their programs. Here's how it works. GiveWell dedicates over 20,000 hours a year to researching charitable organizations. They handpick a few of the highest impact evidence-based charities. Over 50,000 donors have used GiveWell. They've donated more than $750 million. These donations save over 75,000 lives and improve the lives of millions. And here's the best part. GiveWell is free. GiveWell doesn't take a cut of your donation. They allocate your tax-deductible donation to the charity you choose. Plus, they publish all of their research on their site for free. I found Give directly through GiveWell. It is, the studies have shown giving directly to people who need money is the best way to get them out of poverty and extreme poverty. But there are other charities there, but Give Directly, which I don't think has any relationship with GiveWell other than the similarity in the name, I found through there, but you can find other charities. You can get ratings on charities. And if you've never donated to GiveWell's recommended charities before, you can have your donation matched up to $1,000. You can do so before the end of August or as long as the matching funds last. So you only have 1 or 2 days left to head over there. To claim your match, go to givewell.org and pick podcast at the Majority Report and the Majority Report at checkout. That's givewell.org, pick podcast and the Majority Report at checkout. Make sure they know you heard about GiveWell from the Majority Report to get your donation matched up to $1,000. That's 2 days. So go check it out. You can double your impact. Also, today's sponsor, they are dressing me very well. I've got a sweater right over there on the couch right now. It's not exactly sweater weather, but I got ahead of it.
Breaking news, Sam does not dress himself.
Well, I do my best. But this season, you can let Stitch Fix do all the hard work like I have. Stitch Fix offers clothing hand-selected by expert stylists for your unique size, style, and budget. Every piece is chosen for your fit and your life, so you can look and feel your best. And this is the way it works. They send it to you. You try the pieces on at home before you buy. You keep what you love. You return what you don't. Stitch Fix has free shipping and easy returns or exchanges. Prepaid return envelope is included. I've told the story of the 2 shirts I got over the summer. I can't remember what the names of them are now. But one was a sort of a polo style gray one. I thought that was the one that I was going to keep, and that my stretch, my reach shirt was that blue one, that button down short sleeve shirt. I ended up sending back the gray one, keeping the blue one. So I expanded my sartorial repertoire, and it was an easy return on the polo. There's no subscription required. You just pay $20 for a styling fee for each box, which gets credited towards pieces you keep. There are no hidden fees ever. Stitch Fix has styles and clothing to fit any occasion for women, men, and kids. They ship all over the U.S. and available in the U.K. as well. And I got right over there a baseball style, that's what they call it.
Yeah.
Cardigan sweater, zip up. And folks, you're going to be seeing that once the weather turns. But I wanted to get in there early. Get started today at stitchfix.com. They know what I like. They know what I like now. I've been doing the thumb up and thumb down thing. Get started today at stitchfix.com/majority. You get 25% off when you keep everything in your fix. That's stitchfix.com/majority for 25% off when you keep everything in your fix. It's stitchfix.com/majority. All right. I want to welcome back to the program Dr. MarkAlain Dery. He is an infectious disease physician and epidemiologist at AccessHealth, Louisiana, host of the Daily Noise Filter podcast. MarkAlain, where are you? Where are you zooming with us from now?
It's City Hall in New Orleans.
And so the power's back on there?
No, just in City Hall. So City Hall has its own generators. The power was out maybe for a couple hours last night until they were able to fix it. And then obviously there's Wi-Fi here as well. That's how obviously I'm zooming into you. But the rest of the city, there's no power at all.
All right. So, tell us, just give us a brief rundown of, I guess, the past 24 hours, but maybe it's important for us to understand the context prior to that, because this is not just a hurricane situation. This is a real problem in terms of the hospitals.
Absolutely. I mean, this is almost this is the perfect storm. It was the convergence of 2 storms, one literal storm and then one viral storm as well. The last 2 weeks, 3 weeks, we saw a massive uptick of cases that you guys have been documenting on the show of Delta. The hospitals have been crazy. These are they were the longest days that I've ever worked. These are some of the most sickest patients I've ever worked with rather, in the hospitals. The COVID units were packed. And I just want to say before I let this slip my mind, these nurses are working 12 hours a day in these Tyvek suits. I'm there a couple of hours, but they're there 12 hours a day, cleaning, feeding. They're true heroes. I just want to say that on the outset. They're true heroes. Big face masks, just amazing work that they're doing. I'm inspired by them every time I walk in. But we just started to see a downturn. I felt it last Wednesday or Thursday because I just wasn't getting as many daily consults that I usually get for COVID. And then certainly the data supports that. The cases are still going, cases are going down, hospitalizations are still going up, but it just felt like it was starting to lessen. And as soon as we were kind of going, thank goodness that's over, then comes Ida, and then this was the largest storm that has hit Louisiana in recorded memory. We were certainly, it hit the day of Katrina, the August 29th, of course, is a day that's imprinted in all of our brains, kind of much like 9/11 is for the rest of the country. August 29th for people from New Orleans is a big day. And I will say this, that the levee system held up remarkably well, and we've learned our lessons over the course of the last 16 years. For example, I just went out for a drive to check on my apartment or my condo, and then also check on our cat. Trees down everywhere, but windows weren't broken. And so what I've since learned was that prior to Katrina, roofs were made out of gravel because the gravel captured heat. But that gravel made for projectiles during hurricanes. So that's why there were a lot of broken windows after Hurricane Katrina. And of course, the roofs were made with nails. So there was a lot of flat tires after Katrina because of all these nails that had got lifted off of the roofs during the storm. So that largely is not here. So the lessons learned from Katrina were certainly applied with respect to levees holding up, billions of dollars spent in really reinforcing the levees, thankfully. And then, of course, the same thing with all the other things I mentioned, rooftops and this sort of stuff. I don't know what it's like on the outlying outside of the levee system yet. I haven't been able to read the news or look at stuff. Again, there's no power. So a lot of the places are having a hard time, media outlets are having a hard time broadcasting as well. So then why am I at City Hall? My wife is the deputy chief of staff for Mayor Cantrell, so I'm in her office right now. But I also work with the health department in many ways. And yesterday, I came here to work the phones with for medical emergencies. And the one thing that we kept getting phone calls over and over again was, what do I do about my oxygen? What do I do about my oxygen? Because oxygen tanks and concentrators work off of electricity. So as the power started to go out all throughout the city, people were obviously very concerned, and there's still a major concern of what's going to happen with oxygen. And then, of course, people who are on hemodialysis on Monday, Wednesday, Fridays. So today's a Monday. So there are a lot of people who got dialyzed on Friday who went Saturday and Sunday as expected, but then on Monday they should be getting dialyzed. And so I'm not really sure what is happening with those folks right now. And in fact, as soon as I'm done here, I'm off to go work to direct a medical shelter that they're opening up, that the health department is opening up for this sort of stuff, for oxygenation, for people who may be feeling sick or whatever, so they could see a doctor. So that's where I'm headed as soon as I'm done here. But it's been pretty intense. I've never seen anything like this in my life. I've gone through many storms. This was a Category 4. It hit the southernmost part of Louisiana yesterday, I think at around 3 o'clock. The wind started whipping up at around 5 when you could still go outside. And it was the deepest howling I've ever heard and experienced. It was like this deep baritone as the winds were pushing through the buildings of downtown, and you could hear this storm coming. Then eventually, obviously, we couldn't be sitting outside even though we were under cover. The health department's on the 8th floor of City Hall, so I had a perfect perch just to sit and watch the most intense storm pass through. Winds, of course, were 120, 130-mile winds. The rain obviously was horizontal. it was flying sideways, and debris flying everywhere. I was watching things just rip off, and even debris that was floating up to the 8th floor as well. The winds were blowing so hard that they were pushing the Mississippi River backwards, just to kind of give you an idea how hard. And today, before I jumped on this call, I wanted to run to look at our condo and to feed the cat, make sure she was okay, and trees down everywhere. I live on a street in downtown New Orleans that's full of trees, almost every single one of them are down. There's a little bit of structural damage around the city. Some buildings collapsed, those that were older, that could sustain the wind forces. And as of right now, we don't know what we know of one confirmed death, but we don't really know what that's going to look like. And we'll find that we'll know more as time goes on.
I know that and you can see in the data that over the past, like you said, the number of COVID infections dropped, I guess, by 27% over the 14-day change. Hospitalizations are up because that's a lagging indicator. There was also reports, I guess, over the weekend that prior to Ida, that Children's Hospital in New Orleans required a federal surge team of support. And so what's I know that there was no way to evacuate these patients because all of the hospitals within the region, and we're talking not the region of New Orleans, we're talking like the South, essentially the South.
Gulf South.
There's just no room for COVID patients right now. What's happening in regards to that? Like, are there people on who are on ventilators? That is this problematic for them? What has been going on with that, and what's happening just more generally with COVID down there, particularly with the kids?
Right. So obviously, as you said, what we're seeing, and I can't remember the last time I was on the show, and I think I may have even talked about it. We're seeing a shift with this Delta. We have a large amount of people, I think maybe 80% in the US over the age of 65 or 70. I can't remember the statistics exactly in my head. I'm a little anxious and didn't sleep very much last night. But we have very high vaccination rates in the elderly. So what we're seeing is COVID is finding those people who aren't vaccinated. And obviously those that are under 12 are obviously not vaccinated. So we are seeing a shift. So in my last couple of weeks, I've seen and taken care of mostly 20, 30, 40-year-olds. Very, very healthy, mostly men. Very, very healthy, and mostly 90% unvaccinated. When we are looking specifically at children, as you said, Children's Hospital was full. I don't remember a time that Children's Hospital has been full before, and there has been several strike teams that have been helping. FEMA's been sending strike teams. They sent a strike team to the hospital where I'm at West Jeff, but we've been doing really good. The doctors we've been really keeping up. We have a very tight-knit community at West Jeff, and so West Jefferson Hospital. And so we've been working really hard, but obviously the strike team was needed at Children's Hospital such that they were sent. I have not, like I said, I've not heard or seen Children's Hospital be full like that before. So it is very, very striking. And again, very, very distressing that people aren't being vaccinated, because the best way to protect children is to be vaccinated yourself, and to make sure that when children go out into schools and stuff, that they're masked as well. But I will say this, that the hospitals are full. Certainly the hospital that I have privileges at is full. We're using areas of the hospital that had never been either used for patient care, or more specifically, places that had never been intensive care units, or where we're putting COVID units in. And I will say this, that it was with a lot of anxiety that I had, was telling people who were calling saying, what do I do about my oxygen? We do have certain points where people can swap out their small tanks, but those small tanks are only 2 hours worth of oxygen. So I was telling people we're gonna have to go to the ER, and I'm sending people to go to the ER right now when I know the ERs are full, is really something that was very distressing for me to do. But I had to guide people to do something. So I'm sending people to go to the hospitals that are already full, people who are already vulnerable or possibly immunocompromised. That's why they're on oxygen in the first place. And then I'm sending them to the hub of where COVID is. So it was very stressful, and it remains to be stressful now. And again, as soon as I leave here, I'll have a better idea of what's happening once I hit this medical shelter. I'll have a better idea of how things are being sustained out there.
I don't want to hold you too long because I know you got stuff to do, and I don't want to pepper you with too many questions because
That's okay. That's okay.
I got to be a little bit fried.
My shift starts in whatever they said. Whenever I'm done with this, I can head over there.
Well, the biggest danger here, right? I mean, this harkens back to the beginning of the pandemic when we were talking about bending the curve, because the issue here is there is simply not room in these hospitals to deal with situations like this. And I mean, so, you know, what happens when you reach capacity, and not just in terms of like physical capacity, but the capacity of a hospital to care for patients, because there's only so many doctors and so many nurses, and you need to sleep too.
Listen, I'll tell you what, every doctor and every nurse that I talk to, if we're not talking about patient care and we're just letting our guards down, we're all saying the same thing, that we're getting tired. It's getting very, very tiring. It's very, very hard. I mean, I appreciate these doctors that are going on strike. I really do. I see where they're coming from. And people will say to me, well, you know, the Hippocratic Oath. And I respond that, well, the Hippocratic Oath was predicated on the fact that people and governments would take care. They would do the right thing, right? Like if there's a vaccine, you would take it, right? That was what the Hippocratic Oath assumed, that people would participate in the healthcare process. And that's why we're doing the job that we do. So I appreciate why that they're walking out, because they're incredibly frustrated. I don't see myself doing that, but it is starting to get very taxing. And this storm that came through is just another incredibly taxing event. And nerves are going to be frayed. I'm going to focus on giving the best care possible, making sure that I remember all my internal checklists when I need to do something, this, that, or whatever. But, and I certainly hope this doesn't happen, but I am starting to get somewhat concerned about, the mental health of our healthcare workers. We were talking about flattening the curve. If you look at the curve of the U.S. today, that cases are still going way, way, way up right now, right? And you see, when we were talking about bending or flattening the curve, the caseload was like tiny. It was a fraction of where, but everybody was saying flatten the curve, and it was great. But we don't hear any of that right now. And what we're seeing is just a blatant disregard. I mean, we're seeing governors in the South, the entire South, right? Highest cases, highest mortality, highest hospitalizations. That's going to change very soon, because COVID is going to find all of the people who are vulnerable, and then it's going to start shifting to other states that are having motorcycle rallies that are poorly vaccinated, like South Dakota. It's going to start finding places like in Iowa that's having their major state fair. That's going to be 1 million people who are going in there. As you know, I'm a musician, so some of my musician friends went and played a show in Iowa, I think, a festival, which was crazy for me to think about that. They didn't.
Oh no,
he's frozen.
It's a blatant disregard for what is happening with us, and I know that I've talked about this before, that you look at the me societies and the we societies, and we live in a me society, and there's just no, we can't sustain doing what we're doing if people are constantly just looking out for themselves rather than looking out for the community. And as physicians, as healthcare workers, as nurses or whatever, we can only be here for a certain amount of time. I mean, I'll tell you a story that Dr. Cantor, who's our chief medical officer of the state, he's an ER doctor, and he told the story of a person who had a heart attack in Baton Rouge, and they had to go to 6 different hospitals before they were able to get care. And it wasn't because the hospitals were full. They are, but with a heart attack, they'll bring you in because time is muscle. Every minute that passes by that they don't clear that heart attack, part of your muscle dies. It wasn't because of that. It was because there wasn't enough nurses to take care. It was 6 hospitals who didn't have the nursing staff to take care of this individual. So we're playing it as a society. We're playing a very, very dangerous game. Louisiana does not have the vaccination rates. Orleans Parish does. And what we're seeing, the cases are going down in Orleans Parish largely due to the fact that we have a mask mandate. largely, and we're starting to see a vaccine mandate is starting to kick in as well. But it's largely because of the mask mandate. It's largely due to the fact that we have a very high vaccination rate. And then also it's just the nature of this virus, that it's very much a lives fast, dies young type of virus. And so we're going to see it burn through the South, and then you're going to start to see it's going to start finding pockets around the country that are in poorly vaccinated states. And then it's going to do the same thing. But just wait, because just like last year when we had multiple hurricanes lined up in the Gulf, we're going to see another variant that's right around the corner, because we just don't have the global vaccination rates that we need to have. And until, we saw the president, was talking about waiving the TRIPS, the TRIPS, or the patent, the intellectual patent property on these vaccines, but has not moved since then, right? And so until countries like Brazil, like India, like Thailand can start making their own vaccines, we're going to be in this conundrum where, okay, so let's say Delta's gone, but right around the corner is Lambda. And Lambda is starting to show evidence of being vaccine evasive. And let's say we get through Lambda, then we'll eventually get to the one that I make up. I call it Delta Delta Epsilon. We get to Delta Delta Epsilon, and that one is completely vaccine evasive. What do we do at that point? And so these are the concerns, especially somebody like myself who thinks about this, who's a COVID expert, and it's of great concern that we're here. And then again, like you said, like we opened up, you have the convergence of two storms, the most powerful storm in the history of Louisiana, with the most powerful surge that we've seen. And we're only at the beginning. I can report back in a week or two to see what actually transpired from all this. And lastly, I will say this, that thankfully, again, the flood walls, the levees held up. So there was no flooding like there was with Katrina, but we're completely without power as I'm talking to you right now. There's no air conditioning in this office. There's pockets of electricity around City Hall. And again, we're lucky that my wife's got, she has power in her office. There's no air. There's no air. Obviously outside right now, it's hot, it's humid. It's a typical humid summer day in New Orleans where air conditioners are usually running. There isn't that. So without power, and I don't know if you heard, there was a power tower in Avondale, which is a southwestern part of New Orleans, that just fell right into the river. And as a result of that, the entire network is completely down. And so we're expected to not have power for who knows? I hear different people say different things. The mayor is right now doing a press conference, so she's probably giving this information as we speak, but we're expected to not have power for quite some time. And I got in my car to go home, as I mentioned, and as I got in my car, I'm like, okay, well, everything's cool. And then I realized, right, my wife and I both have electric cars. So we only have, now fortunately, New Orleans is a small place, so we can walk or ride bikes. So that's fortunate. But the hospital where I work is about 10 miles away. So it's 20 miles round trip. So eventually those miles are going to, and I have a 2014 electric vehicle. So the battery's down to like 50 or 60 miles a charge. So without a charge, obviously. So that's another thing that just occurred to me as I was driving home to look after the cat, that we both have electric cars and we have no charging capabilities. And what this really speaks to is something that we as New Orleanians have been saying for quite a long time. The same thing with folks in Texas, I would imagine too, is they have to put these wires underground. This is ridiculous that that our system, which is so dependent on electricity and power, and that these are not underground. And why are we not using more renewable energy? And you can see the sun shining brightly behind me, and all of this would be a complete, at least there would be something for us to be able to have. And I'm not necessarily, for me, I'm fine being uncomfortable, but it's the people who require oxygen. It's the people who are requiring infusions, for home infusions, for antibiotics, for whatever therapies they're needing, for people, for dialysis, this sort of stuff. There are people who do a nightly dialysis, that's called peritoneal dialysis. Those people do it every night, and those people without power. So this is we're at the beginning. Thankfully, the storm passed. Thankfully, the levees held up, but now it's a matter of just sitting and waiting to see and doing one of these things. The governor just did a press release where he said that right now there's one known death, but he predicts that there's going to be more as these problems of not having power, heat strokes. We know that the elderly and the vulnerable are subjected to extremes of temperatures, particularly heat. So this is going to do is going to fill up the hospitals even more. And again, you're putting vulnerable people in the hospitals. And I have seen people in the hospitals who were COVID negative, because everybody gets tested as soon as they get in, and they may be in the hospital for like 9 days, 10 days for something completely different, who develop COVID in the hospital, which is not a surprise. I'm working with, I have a patient right now who came in for something completely different, pneumonia, necrotizing pneumonia, and developed COVID while he was in-house. And so that's a real possibility. And so it's very distressing, and it's of great concern.
MarkAlain, one final question. It's a little bit general, and if you're not up to it at this moment, that's fine. But you mentioned masking. Vaccine rates have started to go up, probably as a function of mandates, probably as a function of hopefully people like realizing it's problematic. The big thing now with a lot of kids going back to school is masking. A story out of California that details how an unvaccinated teacher went in. There's a mask mandate there, but during some class reading, she didn't use her mask. Front row, kids in the front row, 80% of them got COVID. It diminished the further back they were. Spoke to Dr. Michael Osterholm a while back about masks. He talked about the difference. You got 20 minutes with a cloth mask in a room that is sealed with someone who has COVID. Presuming, I'm not sure if they're wearing a mask or not, and the quality of the mask. Can you just speak a little bit about that dynamic? I've seen videos online where people are trying to argue masks don't mean anything. You can do the cigarette test and you can see the smoke coming out. But the amount of smoke that comes out and the freedness of it and going into your, that matters as to your ability to catch COVID, right?
Right, it does, and I have differed. I have a different opinion than Dr. Osterholm, who I admire greatly. And last summer we had a public kind of back and forth through op-eds, and I heard your interview with him, and again I respect him greatly. I think that he's slightly off with the mask. I am, and I've heard you kind of quote him several times, Sam. So I appreciate you letting me kind of give you my opinion on this. I think any facial covering is helpful. And a lot of people like myself get frustrated with Dr. Osterholm because he makes it seem like unless you have an N95, I have an N95 around here somewhere, unless you have an N95, you're not protected. Well, to a certain degree, to the letter of the science, he's correct. I can't argue that point, but he's also, beyond being a scientist, he's a public health practitioner. And I just wish he just didn't have as emphatic an approach toward it. I'm much more, like I remember, I think you were talking to, I forget who it was you were talking to, someone from The Intercept, I think, and you were saying, if two people were sitting in the room with N95s, they can talk all day long and they would not get the virus, and that's true. But I'm telling you, from personal experience, I see doctors and nurses just walking around the hospitals with just surgical masks like this, just a 3-ply surgical mask, and they never got COVID, and they are in people's faces listening to their heart and lungs every day. So I think he's a little emphatic about it, and I see where he's coming from. And again, he put an op-ed out, and I put an op-ed out responding to him. So I see where he's coming. I think just any facial covering really does the trick. I think the first time we talked, I was unclear about how much facial coverings and where we were with facial coverings at that point. I knew that they were going to be helpful, but now I'm sold because I see it in the hospital every day. I wear an N95 and then I cover my N95 with a mask so that I can hold on to my N95 for as long as I can, basically until the strap breaks or I can feel too much air coming through. And then I'll get rid of it and pick up another one. But when I'm out in the community, I just will mask or I'll double mask and I feel very safe. I know plenty of other doctors that have done that and they've done very, very well. So yes, the quality of the mask matters to the letter of the law, yes. But I would say it's
the difference between saying a seatbelt, without an airbag, it may not be as protective, but it's still protective. And no seatbelt in like a tank is also going to be protective. Like, I mean, there's degrees, but you don't want to eschew the any type of protection because it's not the maximal protection.
That's my beef with that. And when I heard that interview that you gave with him, it was frustrating for me because I was like, yes, he's right to the letter of the law.
And to be clear, that's the difference between public health policy and perhaps a physician who is making an assessment of something, right? I mean
let me see if I can rephrase that. He's an epidemiologist and public health practitioner. So that's what makes me like, if he were like a pure hardcore aerosol scientist, of which that they do exist, I can understand where he's coming from. But again, he's taking a very emphatic approach toward it. And as a public health practitioner, I would hope that, and I listen to his podcast every week, and he really just sticks to the science very, very emphatically. Whereas again, like people like me who are on the front line, who are in the hospitals, and I see my colleagues just walking around with just a 3-ply mask, and they just change it when they leave the hospital. They do fine. They're vaccinated and they're fine. Now, if we're talking unvaccinated, maybe we don't know that yet. But I can't say more than anything else. Like it's getting tiring to see that we're still having these mask wars, to see these flight attendants having to chastise the folks that are flying. It's incredible to see these governors on both sides of the states, and Florida on one side and Texas on the other, that are really putting their political career really ahead of public safety. It's nice to see these judges are slapping back against them. It's nice to hear the president talk about, well, if you're not going to get money for your school district, the feds will come in and make sure that you guys get paid. That's the right thing to do. I agree with that, because all that they're trying to do on the local level is just try to protect their folks. They're protecting the children, because if you don't do that, we're going to see this virus find as many people who are unvaccinated, and it will affect them. And then ultimately that affects us. So not only is it going to affect their health, and again, we haven't even said word one about what the long-term effects of COVID are, beyond just what we refer to as long COVID, right? The so-called long hauler syndrome or post-COVID syndrome. We don't know what sort of cardiac effects it could have. We don't know what kind of pulmonary effects it could have, endovascular effects. We don't know any of that because we're not out, but we have seen it with people who have survived Ebola. Right? We have seen it with other epidemic diseases as well. And just to kind of let you know, there are Ebola outbreaks happening right now in Africa, as well as Marburg outbreaks as well. So while we have our own perfect storm, there are other parts of the world that have viral hemorrhagic diseases, as well as COVID circulating as well. So it's a time right now, and I wish these governors would just stop putting their own careers ahead of themselves and look to public safety. And I think somebody may have made the point on your show or wherever, but I think to a large degree that that if you are largely giving false advice, like we're starting to see these medical licensing boards, state boards are starting to pull licenses away from physicians who are out there making these false statements. And I wish that there was an equivalent for governors or for politicians as well. Now, of course, that's called the voters. But then, of course, anytime the election comes around, so much money gets thrown into there that they fool their voters. But there is political malpractice that is being practiced right now by politicians. And I had a reporter once ask me, "What can we do? What can you do to stop the misinformation?" And I said back to him, "What can I do? You're the press. This is your job, right? You're the Constitution. You're the only profession named in the Constitution. It's your job to hold the powerful at check. I'm just one small voice. You have a platform." And then when he ended, he said, "If you could wave a magic wand, what would you do?" I said, "You know what you could do? Every night, have 4 or 5 physicians, 3, 2, however many you want, to put them on 10 minutes a day, at the top, let's say 10 o'clock every night, you then feed us all of the misinformation that was fed that day by politicians or from Facebook, and just give us a half hour to unpack each one of them, and so that we can explain how that works. And we don't have that platform, and misinformation circulates 6 times faster than real information does, because it's all clickbait. It's sexy, things that people are going to want to click on, whereas a scientific paper is a scientific paper. It's dry. It's not meant to be exciting. And so we are subject to misinformation, and that misinformation is without question driving what we're seeing right now.
Well, MarkAlain Dery, thank you so much for your time today. I'd like to catch up with you. We can talk maybe in the, when you're on the other side of this crisis, talk a little bit about the vaccine efficacy waning, perhaps, and other issues that we'd like to address. But I really appreciate your taking the time, and know you're under a tremendous amount of duress and stress right now.
Thank you, Sam, and Emma, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
All right, folks, we're going to take a quick break, and we'll be back with a couple more stuff before we wrap things up. We're back. Let's look at the doctor had mentioned, the problems in Louisiana in terms of evacuating patients. They had enough time to be aware of the potential of Ida coming, but the problem is they didn't have enough time to go far enough to where you could evacuate these patients, because places like Florida, Texas, surrounding states are being hit so hard with COVID right now that there are simply not either the beds, and what Dery said about the nurses. This is the thing that I think people don't fully appreciate in terms of,
the human power behind treating all of these COVID patients.
Yeah.
I mean, the immense exhaustion. Oh, but don't worry, we clapped outside of our windows, Sam.
Well, but the point is like, people just think capacity when you hear the shorthand of like there's only so many beds in the ICU. The issue is not literally just the beds.
It's the manpower
you
that
can
needs
get
right.
blow up mattresses, and you can find a gymnasium. The problem is that nurses are trained. Medical equipment exists.
We joke about this, but North Dakota was really playing on that difference. They were saying, we have these beds available, but they weren't actually staffed.
Well, that's the thing, is that, and I don't know. I can't tell if people are ignorant about this or willfully ignorant, but it is not just, it's not like, well, we're a hotel and we can find the beds. We're just going to cut back a little bit on the service. There's not going to be any room service tonight. No, that's not what happens in treating people.
No mints on the pillow.
Exactly.
But like the thing is, I also think that people just don't want to think about hospitals until they have to think about them. No one wants to think about the blood and sweat that goes into treating this kind of deadly disease.
And we also have a situation in this country where we have massive hospital conglomerates who are trying to squeeze every dollar of profit they can out of it. We have cutbacks on public hospitals. They want no slack. And so instead of having proper staffs for hospitals as is, they always understaff by 10, 15% because that's their profit margin. You see it with the nurses in St. Vincent's up in Worcester, but you see it all across the country. And no slack in the system. In fact, the opposite of no slack. I mean, I should say the opposite of slack. There's always going to be a slight, we're always going to run this, you know, with at 100% capacity with 95% of what we need or 92% of what we need. And that's where our profit comes from. And
what do you know? It falls on the backs of the workers.
Indeed. Here is John Bell Edwards on CNN Sunday talking about that dynamic about there's nowhere for us to evacuate these people from, too.
We had 4 hurricanes last year during COVID, but we had a small fraction of the number of people in our hospitals that we currently have. We have more people in the hospital today, 2,450 with COVID, than we had at any point before this current surge. And when Hurricane Laura hit last year, we only had about 300 in the hospitals. So evacuating hospitals is not going to be possible because there's nowhere to bring those patients to. There's no excess capacity anywhere else in the state or outside the state. And so we're really worried about prolonged power outages.
And speaking of the prolonged power outages, you heard MarkAlain Dery talk about the sort of just the material implications of this. And he said, right now I'm in the city hall. We could have renewable energy. We could have solar panels on our hospitals, and that would provide power in this type of situation. You have an entire city without power. You've got people on dialysis. You've got people on oxygen. And we are right on the verge of a crisis with these people. And simultaneously, we have a big infrastructure bill, multiple ones, in Congress, and these issues are connected. And credit where credit's due. Bill Cassidy, Republican senator from Louisiana, making this point on CNBC.
Again, $50 billion is in there for resiliency, $65 billion in there to harden the grid, things that certainly would help here. And so now where Republicans are, I don't know yet, but I'm sure hoping that Republicans look around my state, see this damage, and say if there's money for resiliency, money to harden the grid, money to help sewer and water, then maybe this is something we should be for.
Well, good luck with that.
Exactly.
Because the poorest are going to be the people that bear the brunt of what happens in Louisiana and what happens due to the effects of climate change. Like, there is a direct line that can be drawn due to climate change, which is tackled in the reconciliation package that 0 Republicans will ever vote for, to Ida right now. I mean, over the Gulf of Mexico, it's been described as bathwater, and it's been just churning out these tropical storms and intense storms and hurricanes because it's a lot warmer in the Gulf than it's been in years, specifically this summer. And so that's part of what we're seeing here. And, that warming being a little bit abnormal, it's going to be very normal in the coming years. And we better, one, have the hard infrastructure to deal with it, like Cassidy says there, but that's not all we need. We need to tackle the root cause of this, which is climate change.
And I don't know, I saw I get some research by the Democrats of their bill suggests that it will cut our carbon emissions by 45% by 2030. Now, none of this is locked in yet. Mm-hmm. And we're seeing this also on the expansion of the Medicare side, where you've got big, not just insurers who are worried about losing the profits from Medicare Advantage when it comes to dental and vision and whatnot, but also the providers. This is, the sort of like, it goes under the radar, but it is the providers who I think are the biggest opponents to expansions of Medicare, whether it's Medicare for all or Medicare for more at this point, because they don't want their rates cut. The same reasons why they are fighting against the expansion of Medicare is also why we know it is the most efficient way to deliver health care, or at least health care payments, because they know they're going to get less money, because the buyer of healthcare, the payer of healthcare, the single payer, is going to be savvy enough to know how much they should be paying for each procedure, what the efficacy of these procedures are, et cetera, et cetera. And so the very fact that there is this type of lobby from medical providers from medical providers against Medicare is exactly the same reasons why we, as people who need medicine or need health care, should be supportive of it. But we'll talk more about that in the coming days. We want to say goodbye to our viewers who are watching us on Peacock.
Goodbye, Peacock viewers. We will see you tomorrow. Really stepped on your toes there.
No, actually, I like that. That was good.
You handed it off.
It was a handoff. We successfully finished. You finished my sentence. And hello to. All right. Well, we'll work on that part.
Yeah.
We'll work on.
Thought I'd just leave you hanging.
Yeah. All right.
But I mean, who are we welcoming in that's new? Welcome to the only YouTube audience. Welcome to the diminished audience.
Jeez. What went on here last week?
I almost fell out of my chair earlier.
A little dark around here. My God. We're going to head into the fun half. I'm going to go through this story about this CDC report in California. About the story of the teacher. I mean, she must just feel horrible. It's unbelievable. Did you just laugh about that?
No, I just ruled. I'm sorry.
You're having a tough time today.
I'm really having a tough time. I tried to fix my mic and tried to sit back down in my chair earlier, and I almost fell down. There's a lot of things going on. Anyway. Hope no one caught that.
Yeah, I mean, I probably should.
This is being recorded, right?
Yeah, it's a good thing you didn't draw attention to it.
Exactly.
I was trying to play it off. Sam drew attention to it.
Well, I mean, you almost fell off your chair.
That wasn't on camera.
Well, I mean, had I not said anything, people would be like, "Boy, Sam really is not even paying attention to Emma, like having some type of like episode." Folks, just a reminder, it is your support that makes this show possible. You can become a member at jointhemajorityreport.com. When you do, you support the free show, and you get the extra content, and you keep this show chugging along. Also, our email has exploded.
Whoa.
We got to like file a report on the explosion. You can sign up for the AM Quickie newsletter every morning in your email box, as it were, at majority.fm. Scroll down to the bottom, put your email in there. We will never sell your email to anybody, and you can opt out at any time, I guess. I mean, I don't know why you would, but check it out, the AM Quickie. Also, check out our Discord, majoritydiscord.com, and justcoffee.coop, fair trade coffee, tea, or chocolate. Use the coupon code majority, get 10% off. Just some little teasers of this week.
Ooh.
So on Friday, I am not clear whether I'm going to do this at the beginning of the show or at the fun half, make a switch.
Think it's got to be the whole show.
Well, there's no, but I think what I'm trying to figure out is this. It's going to be Suns Out, Guns Out. And listener Ronald Reagan has very graciously donated the Suns Out, Guns Out shirt. Yeah, I think he sent me like probably over the years like 12 of them. But the one that I'm probably going to go with, I'm not going to say what it is, but
Okay.
People will like it.
You have to thank Ronald Reagan for the other gift that you
yes,
received.
yeah. Ronald Reagan sent me, what was that, a People magazine back there with J-Lo and Ben Affleck, so I can catch up on my reading.
They're finding love again.
But here's the thing. I want to figure out a way, and I haven't been able to sort of figure it out, like how do use the Suns Out, Guns Out to raise funds for Afghan refugees if we can. I don't know how we would do that. Like I put out like part of my guns.
It seems like you're kind of putting an obstacle in the way.
No,
of
I'm
getting-
going to do it. I
Right.
just want to figure out like what's the best way to peg. Maybe we'd just say like it's Suns Out, Guns Out.
Right. Just show your appreciation for the guns by donating at this link.
Yeah, maybe I'll do like a muscle flex for each every time we like $100. I'll do a
that's
muscle
actually
flex.
that's a good idea.
That may not work out so well for me.
Well, I mean,
because
the
I feel like I'll
attempt is
pull,
enough.
I'll strain a muscle.
by flexing.
Yeah, I haven't done that
That's
in
an
about
indictment.
15 years. So, also, we received a gift. I'll talk more about it, but it's I haven't opened it. I'm probably going to open it on air in the fun half. A portrait of Michael.
Oh, wow.
I have a hint of what it looks like, but we'll do that later in the week. Matt, what's happening in the Matt Leckian media universe?
Yeah, for patrons of Left Reckoning, yesterday we released a conversation between David's buddy Rob McPherson, and I. We talked briefly about Rob's experience working on Hollywood film sets and television sets, and how it's not actually as glamorous and it needs union protections, and often it's a very unionized industry, but it's also all freelance. So we talked about the dynamics there. And then we got to the fun stuff, which is talking about Radio Free Tom. You know Tom Nichols? He's like this
Is
guy.
he like on Twitter?
Yeah, he's a big Twitter guy.
Super Democrat. I think he's like gotten criticized by him at some time, but I've always been like, who is this dude?
He's a big resistance Democrat. Well, no, that's the thing. Is like he's kind of a Republican, but he's been pretending he's a Democrat. So anyway, we talked about the time he called me a snowflake because I questioned why.
Are you okay?
I'm fine. Actually, we talked about him calling me a snowflake in the context of the 2016 primary, where he was saying actually working class people who vote Republican don't need anything more from the state. They're just whiners. Anyway, so that's all for patrons. Patreon.com/Left Reckoning to hear us.
Have you been waiting 5 years to address that?
Well, no, it came back up again because Tom Nichols is saying that Afghanistan is all of our faults. Even though he's quoted 20 years ago saying, "Oh, these plans look great to me," and also
who's all of our fault?
Like everybody, like us Americans. Like we really have to look at ourselves. We kind of let the team down for Afghanistan.
Like in terms of not sufficiently supporting the war.
Yeah, exactly. And putting the military in a tough spot by getting out of control and stuff like that. So.
Well, like he's a
I don't
step
think
away
that
from
criticism is wrong. We shouldn't have been there in the first place.
No, but he's saying the American people,
Yeah,
not the power structure.
Exactly. Yeah.
Like it's a step away from we're too woke.
It's kind of like
Afghanistan.
Yeah, and he has a newer piece that's saying like I don't know. It's kind of confusing to say, but he says that nostalgia wasn't real because his first job as a 19-year-old was firing people at the Uniroyal tire factory in his city. So like the economy was bad then too, but to which point I see like we know what wages and productivity stats are. So like your
experience at one factory when you were 19 does not actually
you saw the start
refute all of the data that's compiled by.
In fact, it's like if anything, it says like you saw the start of this process that is tearing the country apart right now. But he's a guy who wrote a book about how like experts should be in charge of everything. He's a big technocrat guy. Lives in like Annapolis.
Jennifer Rubin.
And then how do you then make an argument that experts should be in charge of everything? But my personal experience at my job when I was 19 is more relevant than the data that is compiled by experts.
Yeah, I know. And we won't even talk about that data. It's just like people's sense of nostalgia is a bit wonky, and the left exploits that. It's like, well, they might be exploiting like wage
That's
stagnation.
just a bizarre. That's bizarre. But all right, that sounds interesting. I'm getting now IMs about $500, and you got to do the calves dance on the IM.
I'm going to put out a bit more $500.
Don't forget, check out Know Me Show. YouTube.com/The Know Me Keys Show. and see you in the fun half. 646-257-3920.
You are in for it.
All right, folks. 646-257-3920. See you in the fun half.
Are you ready?
Who sent us this?
Alpha males are back. Boy is back. And the alpha males are back.
Just as delicious as you could imagine.
The alpha males are back. Boy is back. And the alpha males are back.
Just want to degrade the white man.
Alpha males are back.
I take all of it in my throat.
Alpha males are back.
Snowflake says what?
The alpha males are back.
You are a madman.
And the alpha males are back.
Oh no, Sam Seder! What a fucking nightmare!
Bring back DJ.
Yeah, or a couple of them. Just put them in rotation.
DJ Danner.
Well, the problem with those is they're like 45 seconds long, so I don't know if they're enough of a break.
That's fucking nonsense. You see white people doing drugs, they look worse than normal white people, and all white people look disgusting.
And the alpha males...
Psych. Fuck them.
Snowflake says what? Snowflake says what?
A hell of a lot of bank. A hell of a lot of bank. A hell of a lot of bank. Okay, I'm making stupid money. Hell of a lot of bank. A hell of a lot of bank.
All lives matter. Have you tried doing an impression on a college campus?
I think that there's no reason why reasonable people across the divide can't all agree with this. Psych.
And the alpha males are back. And the Africans are black African. And the alpha males are black. And the Africans are back.
When you see Donald Trump out there, doesn't a little part of you think that America deserves to be taken over by jihadists? Keep it at 100. Can't knock the hustle. Come on, fuck them. Things I do for the bigger game plan. By the way, it's my birthday. Happy birthday to me, Jew boy.
I have a thought experiment for you.
And the alpha males are back. Africans are black. Alpha males are black. Africans are back.
Come on. Come on. Someone needs to pay the price for blasphemy around here.
I am a total pussy.
We are back. It's the fun half on the majority report, apparently.
No longer.
Well,
I'm not taking it well.
Yeah, people are still referring to it that way, though.
Well, I mean, there will always be supporters of my regime, but it doesn't mean I necessarily have the forces to conduct my coup quite yet.
You know, that is said like someone who is trying to make me a little bit overconfident, so I put my guard down.
Yeah, this is the restoration of Sam. It's a bit...
You can stand down the special guard, Sam. There's no reason. I'm not going to. The coup is not happening.
Well,
That's the way that people...
Yours is backed by the U.S. government, the Democratic Party, and, of course, Peacock. I don't have the necessary funding to...
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. I've got a lot of the Peacock forces here that are...
Right.
Yep. That's...
I'll send us an email.
Exactly. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Sam, you hopelessly mediocre fuckknuckle. I can't believe you bothered to show your old catcher's mitt of a face on the show again after Emma outclassed you so hard day after day. You look like a 7-year-old who had a genie granted one wish, and that wish was to be a septuagenarian mole who lives off Skittles, Adderall, and smugness. I mean, seriously, what a douche. I can almost see the Axe body spray fumes wafting off of you. And aren't people supposed to look better after a vacation? You look like you got repeatedly dicked by a family of Wookiees and then extruded from a half-broken pasta machine. I'm only allowing this like gigantic size I am because it's been a week and they need to catch up.
Right, obviously.
Anyway, I love the show and wanted to point out on the subject of Matt Taibbi that you say you haven't heard him make any noteworthy points of late. And yet you have to pronounce the letters Sebede on your YouTube show with a weird accent. See, you just did it. One of Taibbi's ballywicks, to borrow one of Jamie's favorite words, is how algorithmic censorship is a very slippery slope that we should all be concerned with. I mean, we've had multiple people on this show who have written books about the problem with algorithmic censorship. And I have said from the very beginning, not from the very beginning, I have consistently made the point that we have the ability to regulate these things and say you actually get to hire people instead of having an algorithm make these determinations. But the reason why they have a problem with Sebede is because generally we do the show, and maybe that's what the Friday thing was, why it was 18 and over. I'm not sure.
Sebede?
Because they don't want advertisers, and YouTube doesn't want the promotion of things, even if they're legal in certain areas. And, and in and of itself, I don't, that's the terms of service for that platform. The issues with that platform are much bigger than that.
But we may have made a mistake. It might have been because we had that beer on Friday.
You did?
We did have beer on Friday, yeah.
You did?
Fun have.
In the afternoon?
Yeah.
I was on island time.
God, what? Jesus. This is like the same problem I have with my 16-year-old daughter, for God's sakes.
It is funny, though, that you have to pronounce Sebede, but you can pronounce ivermectin just normally.
Right, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Somebody on hold can't hear the show. You got to put up that thing. I mean, again, when there's something more substantial, I'll put, I'm happy to have Taibbi on. But, send ideas. I think I don't want to get into it. And Michael Pollan, John Hodgman, and for God's sakes, Douglas Rushkoff. Okay. We'll put those on the list. Bernie Bot. Hey, I'm our crew. As DJ Danarchy tweeted this weekend, hilarious progressive YouTuber and soundboard savant RM Brown is getting content strikes on his channel from none other than free speech warrior Adam Carolla, whose feelings he hurt in his now removed videos. Everyone, please go subscribe to him. And I recommend having him on. Very funny dude. Maybe we should do that. Have him on Friday. Maybe this coming Friday would be good to see if we can get that guy on. It's always snowy in Ottawa. Step 1, goes on vacation, acquires suns out tan, complete. Step 2, puts on tank top, activates guns out in progress. Step 3, profit. There you go. All right, well, one more IM before we go into this. Laura from Somerville. My parents are on the North Shore in Slidell. No power or internet. Hard hit all night with heavy winds and rain. Spotty cell service. Still fears them flooding. At the very least, worried about them in heat without power. Thankful tornado risks have subsided. My dad is 70-year-old, has multiple medical issues. Hoping they can get out soon. Who knows how long without power. Well, I hope they're safe. Our grid is such a disaster. Worcester, over the past couple of winters has lost power for days on end. At one point, like a week and a half, and it's terrifying, particularly now in terms of my folks have a lot of different medical complications, and I mean, how do we have a grid where a major city can have a power outage for more than hours at a time?
I know.
Yeah, I mean, and there's those Texas outages during the winter, and looking at that, Texas has acknowledged 151 storm-related deaths. BuzzFeed News, on the other hand, found that an estimated 700 people lost their lives, and we just moved on.
Yep. I mean, what's the point of this? Like, what's the point of this whole thing that we're doing?
Society?
Yeah, honestly.
That's an
Like
existential
maybe a time
question.
capsule for when people can deal with the information better.
Right. I want to talk about this story. Reported by NBC. I think there's other reports too. CDC did a report on an outbreak in Marin County. And this took place in May. So this may have been, I'm not sure if the Delta variant was how pronounced it was in Marin County in May. I don't even know if the Delta variant was actually around much in this country. It could have been.
Not, yeah.
It could have been up there, but we could be looking at the wild type, which is, again, Delta is significantly more transmittable. I think the R naught for the wild type was somewhere around 2, and the R naught for Delta is somewhere between 6 and 8. And that is, how many people, 1 to 2 and 6 to 8. And that is how many people one person generally has the ability to infect. The other issue is that the RT, our behavior, which reflects our behavior, is also changed. Now, so here's a situation. There was 24, no, excuse me. There was an unvaccinated teacher, showed up to her elementary school classroom. She had a cough and a headache. She thought it was allergies. It's still, which I find sort of just shocking to me that in the course of like a pandemic that people are like, can't possibly be this pandemic that's going around. I mean, you'd think you'd go get tested. But so she comes in. She was only one of 2 staff members that had not been vaccinated at the elementary school. She had 24 students, 22 who were ineligible for vaccination because of age. 22 students were tested. 12 tested positive for the virus. The conclusion was by CDC experts that the attack rate in the affected classroom was 50%, but the students sitting closest, and this was fascinating. Now, she was supposed to be wearing a mask, but when she would do classroom reading, she would do it without the mask. She didn't want it muffled. Yep.
Seems
not
like it
quite
defeats the purpose.
Getting the point.
Did it say if they had open windows?
So let's put up the diagram because this is fascinating. There's a filter at the beginning, at the head of the class where she must have stood. So that was drawing air behind her.
Okay.
One presumes. In the front row, everyone tested positive. 4 students, 6 feet apart. 5 students, 6 feet apart. Everybody tested positive. Early. They were symptomatic early, the 23rd, the 24th, and they all tested positive within a day or two of that, more or less. In the second row, and you can see on both sides, there seems to be windows that were left open, okay? In the second row, people turned positive a little bit later. 3 out of 5 were positive, although 1 was not tested. 1 tested negative. By May 26th, 4 in the third row were tested negative. 1 had tested positive before then. So almost you can imagine she's standing in front of the class, right in the middle of the class, and those first 3 people, they get it.
I remember this from school that kids who sit in what's known as the T zone, their grades are higher. The T being the front row and the middle row. Yeah.
Interesting. Because why? They're goody goodies, or and I don't mean that.
There's a little bit of correlation. Like if you're sitting in the front row, like I used to sit in the back row the first day of class because it's like you want to
You don't want to be seen, right?
But also the teacher's speaking directly to you in some fashion. Okay, and then by the time you get to the 4th row, only 1 person tested positive, one of the kids. 3 tested negative, 1 did not get tested. And in the back row, there were two people who got who tested positive, and then there was an empty seat, and then there was two that tested negative. And I guess the ones in the blue were symptomatic, and so it gives you a sense of when they became symptomatic. All right, so that's what happens in the classroom. 4 students from other classrooms also tested positive COVID-19. They were all siblings of 3 of the students in that unvaccinated teacher's classroom. 4 parents of the children of the school were later infected in the outbreak. Of the infected parents, only 1 was unvaccinated. So when you get in that close quarters with your kids,
right.
The vaccinated experienced symptoms including fever, chills, cough, and headache, and loss of smell. That's the vaccinated. Additionally, 6 students from different grade also tested for positive after one student hosted a sleepover with 2 of the other students from the same class. This is according to the CDC. All students infected in this classroom were ineligible for vaccination due to age. They took specimen evidence gathered throughout the investigation that the infections occurring in the 2 grades were likely part of the same outbreak. I mean, it just gives you a sense. And then you have no idea, like, when these parents went to work.
Yeah.
I mean, and the point being that, like, who knows? Maybe the teacher, if she wore her mask, the numbers would have been, I don't know that they would be 0, but surely they would be less. And so this all of this like insanity about the mask wearing.
Yeah.
It is not 100%, regardless of what mask you use. Percentages can increase with the quality of the masks. But the point is, it is such a low investment, a small investment, to protecting yourself and others around you and children, and stopping the spread so that we also minimize the chances of a variant. Now, it is the case that if we get a variant, it is more than likely going to come from somewhere else because there's a lot less vaccinated people in other countries. But nevertheless, this is the theory, is that we all have to do as much as we can within the limitations that we have. So obviously, if you have some problem, immunodeficiency that makes vaccines impossible, then you do everything that you can to protect yourself and others. You wear masks. If you have some problem that, like, I don't know, you can't find a really good mask, then wear like a face covering. Like, everybody needs to do as much as they can do. And in countries like ours, where we have access to the vaccine, you take the vaccine. In countries like ours, where you have access to wearing masks, you wear the masks. I mean, it is just absurd. This whole like idea, it's like it's the functionally equivalent of like, why should we cut our emissions when, China is putting out emissions?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, give me a break. Like a 2? Like, honestly, like, this is like the mentality of literally of like a 5-year-old.
Well, they have fatigue, and so like their immediate response is to look for an out. They are done with the precautions. They are done with the measures. So, like, I'm gonna find an alternate way to make my fatigue seem righteous. That's where we're at.
And they're fed.
And they make it about their kids. That's how they get like a righteous attitude towards it, and they can posture as if they're in a moral position. They make it about suffocating our kids.
Of course, but they're also fed by these lunatics like Tucker Carlson
right, but
and others.
It feeds that impulse, though.
Yep. It's stunning to me to just watch this stuff and track it. And then those idiots who are like pushing, they're pushing medications, and the impulse to push these treatments is really a part and parcel of that. I mean, there are treatments that you can read about that that they're using, and there was a new study that just came out by the CDC. I'm not sure who did this study. 800 people, and I don't think it's been peer reviewed yet. But they're using it like an SSRI as a therapy, and there are therapeutics that are definitely like cutting down on the death rates and the severity. Apparently, like there
ivermectin?
No, there is some data that suggests that a specific serotonin inhibitor will cut down on the I mean, let me make sure that I'm mispronouncing this stuff so that people understand you should not run out and get this.
Mm-hmm.
But the psychotonic, I can't even.
SSRIs, people know.
No. But the when you get COVID, one of the things that was really problematic early on was your cells are emitting this chemical, the cytokines, I think it is, or whatever it is, and that ends up getting into the lungs, and it shuts down your lung capacity. And these serotonin inhibitors diminish your production of cytokines. And that they're and it's all well and good to say people like there may be some therapies that are out there working, but to go out and promote it, and then to say like, why is this stuff being denied the American public? The implication being that there are forces that are out there, like it all feeding into this authority, like this notion of like this is all some type of authoritarian scam. It's the vapor version of the plandemic.
Mm-hmm.
That's basically what it is.
Well, it's also, we talked about this last week, how it's the only way we're empowered in this country is as a consumer. So it's like, oh, look at this miracle cure. If you just consume, if you just inform yourself as a consumer, you can ask your doctor about the secret thing, and then you're actually safe from it. Instead of just saying like everything about this, from like the what's unknown about the disease to like the new vaccine, like this means we should all be together under one medical system and Medicare for all. Like that's what should be the emphasis now. But instead, it's this: let's be empowered as the smartest consumer and get around it.
But it's something like it is something even darker than that, because it's not just like it's like I have the secret.
Yes,
it is.
It's a narcissism. It's like the same reason people are drawn to like conspiracy theories. It's empowering because like there's a wealth of material and knowledge to consume out there. People feel untethered, especially in this kind of time. That's quite scary. And so when you feel like you have access to, but like it is tied with that, as you say, Matt, right? This like it is tied to a specific sense of American and capitalist identity of a consumer product. Then you're good to go. You're good to go, and you get to feel like superior to your friends and family who may be pushing the vaccine, who may be pushing masking. You get to feel like your life is not going to be inhibited. You can still be superior to other people in the way that you conduct your business and live about your life, and you're not going to have these difficult things and inconveniences. And then at the same time, you also get to feel like the smartest person in the room.
It is. I think it's also like dealing with the. It is very much like conspiracy theories. I mean, it is like it's the new Illuminati, right? Like this is the thing that's going to explain it.
Yeah.
And the thing that is I really do find reprehensible is, I mean, it's fine to talk about, there are some studies somewhere that say that ivermectin might help and this and that, but we need to, this immediate knee jerk of like, well, if they're shutting down the conversation about it, it must work.
And we're going to own Big Pharma by buying a product that Merck created.
Well, that's the other thing is that but it's cheaper, and I get it.
But this Big Pharma, It's cheaper than getting the free vaccine?
Right. Like it's the profit motive. That's the thing that sort of breaks down with this whole sort of authoritarian sort of theory behind all of this. Like the mask wearing is for authoritarianism. It's like to train you. I mean, why haven't we been talking about this whole no shirt, no shoes, no service thing that's been going on for decades?
Well, they're going to inject your shirt into you.
No, but don't you understand that the whole thing that you can't get service at the bodega unless you got your shirt on is for the authorities to get you to comply. And once you're in that sort of comply mode.
What comes next?
I mean, it's entirely brainwashing to accept social control, that we're focusing on masks as a way of being social controlled, as we're about to hit an unemployment benefit cliff. We're about to clear the eviction moratorium. That's literal coercion by the state. And we're talking about putting a mask on people so we can maybe get people to go to school, which, by the way, helps those same capitalists because that means their parents can go to work.
Right. I mean, this is the thing that's so, like, it's so confused. It's so incoherent. And the people pushing this stuff sort of retreat to some type of blanket. It's authoritarian, you're sheep. And I'm just asking questions here. But, you know, people should understand that you're not really well, you are fooling a lot of people. But there was this guy, you know, it is the oldest hyperbolic, sensationalistic conspiracy trick in the game to simply make your titles a question. Right? Like
just asking questions.
Just asking questions.
Tucker's perfected that.
Well, but there's a lot of them out there now who have perfected it. And it is really, you know, I am someone who believes that, like, Thomas Friedman and the times when, you know, Judith Miller and others were sort of the linchpins to the march to war in Iraq.
Yep.
Because you've got the right is doing this, and they're there. And any type of like natural bulwarks that happen, sadly, we just have a somewhat polarized society. So a lot of times people take their cues, and people, hey, look, not everybody has time to inform themselves about everything or anything for that matter. And so people take their cues from other people that are so-called trust agents. And so when you have those sort of so-called trust agents who are not associated with the Bush administration in the context of Iraq, saying, yeah, this is a good idea, we should do this, it brings along a lot more people and it creates the critical mass.
Did you know that Judith Miller... Oh, sorry, go on.
Well, and so my point is that when we talk about things like masks and vaccines and this and that, it is not the lunatics who, like, you know, Louis Gohmert, who are the most problematic when it comes to our society. It is the people who are ostensibly not the lunatics, who spend their time saying, I'm just asking questions about this. I'm just opening the door here. And, you know, the Brett Weinsteins to, you know, just like, I don't know, the you know, Taibbi even, just like sort of like, why is ivermectin being so supplanted? Like, why is it censored? I don't know. Maybe there's a good reason.
Well,
maybe some medical people have a good reason.
I mean, Greenwald cited Osterholm to talk about why was Rand Paul suspended from YouTube, even though Osterholm has been actually had to clarify last summer that I do think, like, even cloth masks are useful. Just don't quote me saying that they're going to be everything you need.
Yeah.
And that's not what Rand Paul was saying.
Right. And the point is that you're transferring the nuance of a public of a sort of a medical leaning public health official, right, into like science-based, really specific, as opposed to sort of like public health policy, which is we're going to have a general policy that for each individual may not make the absolute most sense, but as a public, it makes the most sense. I mean, people, for whatever reason, people who should know better don't seem to understand that concept, or it is, Levitz wrote an article about Glenn Greenwald that he was talking about, like, sort of like something, that it's like being in a non-consensual debate with a libertarian high school debate or something.
Yeah.
And there is this quality of like, well, I'm making this very, very narrow point, which in and of itself, in a complete vacuum and without context, may very well have some truth to it. But when you present it within context, it becomes far less truthful. The fact is, there is no medication, there is no medical procedure, there is no vaccine or therapy or whatever that is going to be safe for 100% of the people. But every single day, medical procedures, medicine, vaccines, practices are prescribed because it is safe 90% of the time, or 80% of the time, or 95% of the time. But if you look at the 5% when it's not, and you apply that 5% of outcomes to how you prescribe to everyone, you're going to get a lot of dead people, or you're going to get a lot of sick people. That's not the way that medicine works. And then from a public policy standpoint, it's certainly not the way that public health works.
Yeah.
The schedule of vaccinations is done to protect, with children, is done to protect the most vulnerable. Because the cost to the not most vulnerable is very, very low in terms of health. But the cost to the most vulnerable, if you don't have that schedule. So you may not be subject to hepatitis C. But the reason why we apply that schedule is because there are people who are potentially could potentially get hepatitis C, young babies. And the cost of you as a young baby getting the hepatitis C vaccine is very, 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 very low in terms of the risk. But the risk of, broadly speaking, society not getting that vaccine to hepatitis C is high. And I don't know. I can't tell if it's just an effective way of generating revenue, or if it's actually like, people actually believe like it's my duty to point out that someone's been censored for talking about ivermectin.
It's because Russiagate doesn't hit anymore.
Yeah.
That's what I think. They're searching for something new. I mean, Taibbi hasn't tweeted about ivermectin since July.
Well, what great company now.
And like only interested in it.
Greenwald and Dorr pushing
only interested
ivermectin.
in the context of a pandemic to talk about this authoritarian algorithm issue.
Right. I mean, it just doesn't make any sense. There's so many better arguments about that where you don't have to defend.
Ivermectin's hot right now, though. It's a trending topic. You're going to get clicks from the people you want to get clicks from. It isn't that deep.
I can't. I don't know. I can't accept that it's that shallow.
Because it's not like it's.
It is a desire to fit into their rubric this thing that is popular.
No, but they see something that's coming up, and so, they see that it's being discussed, and they've already have this framework, and there's a feedback loop, and they're getting this, reinforcing information from their followers, and so then they make the decisions based on that narrow set.
Ivermectin's a great example of groupthink, particularly when you get the farther away from the medical community, because really, who told you about this?
Right. Right.
You just came around what about this horse paste that has some utility for humans in limited contexts? No, you heard about this in the same channels you're starting to monetize now.
Right. And the problem again is that they function as a sort of a flank. It's a little bit of a pincer move, right? You could isolate the people who are promoting this, like the Louis Gohmerts, the Tucker Carlsons, the whomever it is. But then these people with some credibility,
waning as it is,
maybe waning,
do a little laundry. Yeah.
But they're coming out and they're basically, it's like a pincer move. They're covering a flank and they're opening up another front. We're like, wait a second. This is like the same. What's amazing to me is this the same role that Sam Harris played.
Oh, yeah.
In a different context, where it's like, well, there's the lunatics out there who say that we should be afraid of Islam, or there's the lunatics out there who say that torture is wrong. That we should be promoting torture. I'm coming at this from a slightly more nuanced perspective, and
yet reaching the same fucking conclusion.
Slightly nuanced. But the amazing thing to me is that it's like, I remember when like Greenwald could see what Sam Harris was doing, and I can't tell if he said like, hey, wait a second, I'm learning from the master. But that's what this is.
You used to accuse Sam Harris of bigotry.
What's that? Yeah.
Greenwald did.
Yeah, and it was because he's dancing around these things. Just asking questions. Just examining the thing.
And what I choose to examine is entirely downstream from lunatics and also heavily monetizable because it's currently the new hot anti-vax miracle cure that somehow sticks it to Big Pharma by, again, buying a product manufactured by them. Here's your alternative to what the mainstream elites are telling you. It's another way to enrich Big Pharma, except this time it's actually not effective whatsoever and it's going to get people killed. But I see this as a new way to, like, also too, part of it is like that crowd doesn't see a problem with shaving off parts of the far right for their own ends. Like, they don't see that appealing to that crowd is an indictment in and of themselves. They don't have a strong political ballast, and so they see it as, okay, like, this crowd is sympathetic to my civil libertarian-ish argument that I'm trying to push, and, here we go. Game on.
Yeah, it's really distressing. What a crap show. What a crap show.
Should we play that chiropractor video?
Oh, yeah. All right. Speaking of which, that's a good time for that. Hey, hold on. Let's put up this. So this is a video from a chiropractor. That noise always comes on whenever I say chiropractor. This is a video from WDAY news station in Matzo, North Dakota.
Oh, yeah.
Chiropractor. Matt, did you ever go to this guy?
No, I'm not a fan of chiropractic.
We were talking before the show a bit of snake oil by some chiropractors. Not all.
Let's not prejudge. I mean, we'll see this video if there's maybe some evidence of that.
Yeah, I just don't. I don't go to anywhere where anybody. I allow anybody to manipulate my body in any fashion whatsoever. But here
you don't like being touched.
That's true. Here is from the Grand Forks Herald, Daniel Poznarski. This is from August 23rd.
Fargo chiropractor who uses YouTube and social media to talk about health and wellness is tonight still battling the impacts from a hard-hitting COVID diagnosis just weeks ago.
It landed him in Stanford's downtown COVID unit for days, and it prompted him to backpedal on some of his recent claims that were critical of the vaccine. His story tonight from WDAY News reporter Kevin Wallavend.
Yeah, it seems like the lungs and the brain are the big thing because, like...
Dr. Daniel Poznarski is still feeling like he's been hit by a truck.
Almost like a TBI, like a traumatic brain injury or concussion.
The longtime chiropractor from West Fargo, recovering from a COVID diagnosis in late July.
Because, you're trying to survive for a week or however long it is, so you're just in that state.
He's still suffering after effects.
That's what's so frustrating. It's just, it's just like these little things that you could do before you can't.
It was late July. Daniel had a sinus infection, but then soon a fever, and then a trip to Sanford.
I asked the provider, I was like, so do people come out of COVID unit? I'm like...
And soon, the downtown COVID unit.
I kept asking the nurses, I was like, am I gonna be okay? And they're like, we're not supposed to tell you.
While hospitalized, Daniel sent out social media messages asking people to pray for him.
Like, I felt like dying. I felt like I was dying, and I've never felt that before.
And then this comment that sparked a lot of reaction. "Karma's a bitch," he wrote. "I should have gotten the vaccine." This after other posts from him that were critical of vaccinations.
I'm not saying vaccines are bad or anything like that. There's not enough data yet.
Daniel was hospitalized 7 days, but despite being home for weeks now, he's too worn out to work or take care of daily chores, and he's lost 25 pounds. That's life after COVID right now.
But I can't, I can't go through that again. I feel like I would die.
His chiropractic business still not open, and friends have started a GoFundMe site to help him get back on his feet. Kevin Wallivan, WDAY News.
It's impossible to know whether or not this guy apologized, right? I mean, look,
Well, he just said I should have got the vaccine.
I should have got the vaccine.
Yeah.
But maybe also I apologize for telling other people that I shouldn't have gotten the vaccine.
I apologize for having a profile picture that says "Make immune systems great again."
Yeah.
Just in the past couple of days, Mark Bernier, he was a Florida right-wing radio host. Mr. Anti-Vax is how he promoted himself. Passed away, age 65 of COVID. What's the guy's name? Dick Farrell in Florida?
Dick Farrell and Phil Valentine.
From Nashville, other right-wing radio hosts who basically talking about COVID as if it was a joke.
How is it that we can be so concerned about the uncertainty over the vaccine and be not at all concerned about uncertainty over this brand new disease that's causing a pandemic?
In fact, there's a little bit more certainty around the COVID.
Well, also, I mean, there's more certainty around it, but there's also this strain of evangelical conservative that believes let's just let nature take its course as it's what God intended.
There are multiple sort of cohorts of people who have not gotten vaccinated. There is one cohort of people who have not gotten vaccinated because they can't take off work because of the potential side effects. It lays you up for a day in many cases. They're worried about that. They don't have the freedom to do that. And then there are people who are just willful about it. And there are other people who I think are also just they're willfully ignorant. And there's other people who are just ignorant.
Yeah.
And because they get their information from Facebook. I mean, that's just the bottom line. And these other people the part about it the reason why I talk about the radio hosts and the chiropractors putting this stuff up on Facebook is because, look, you decide not to get vaccinated. I disagree with that decision. You are you're wrong, and you're harming society. But if you're out there promoting this stuff, you're just despicable.
You're an evil person, right? But and I will say too, there is this
for profit.
Yeah. There is a third cohort of people who I don't think are actually, one, they can take off work, I think, and two, not anti-vax inherently, but haven't yet been affected by COVID in the same way and aren't going to be proactive about it because we live in as MarkAlain Dery said, a me society, one that saps public health of its collective meaning, which is an active project by the Republicans and conservatives, and basically say, it hasn't affected me yet. I'm fine. I've been fine up to this point. I'm not going to get the vaccine. That's kind of a problem and something that's going to be solved by other people. I think that is a significant third cohort and a harder thing to reckon
Free
with.
rider.
It's a harder thing to reckon with than these are the people the Republican Party and evangelical churches have converted. There are people who don't have the means to get the vaccine, which I think is shrinking. There is that third chunk. That's where I feel more depressed as a society than anything, because those are the people that are gonna get it and then have that reaction.
Right.
and they're not inherently bad people. They're just not conscious citizens. And like, what kind of society are we that we breed that? And like, we're a dog eat dog capitalist society healthcare, and we've made healthcare a commodity. We've made healthcare.
But it's also the classic libertarian thing. Like, what is good for me personally is ultimate. If everybody acts in their own self-interest, I
think it's inherently American because of what we've done with healthcare in this country.
There's vaccine hesitancy in other countries too, but I don't know if it's the same. You're right.
No, I mean there's marches through French streets about vaccine mandates and like in businesses. I understand that, but there is something there is something about the commodification of healthcare that I do think kind of hits at this like sapping of the collective nature of how to respond to a pandemic.
I miss Michael's laugh. My whole family got vaccinated 2 days back, but I do see how some genuine vaccine hesitants are losing trust. I think your seatbelt argument for vaccine is a bit flawed, Sam. Please bear with me. When a specific seatbelt, even if it's 1/10,000th is faulty, you can sue the manufacturer. You have the right to be heard as a victim. With vaccines, the manufacturers have been isolated and protected from any lawsuit. Even the most data-backed proven deaths can cause due to the vaccine. Well, first off, I don't know the seatbelt. I was making the seatbelt more about the mask. But first off, you do know that there is a vaccine court in this country. It is outside of the normal judicial system, and it provides awards to people who are harmed by vaccines. The relationship, the analogy with seatbelts and vaccines is not a good one. And I think I was using that more with masks in terms of like efficacy.
Yeah.
Because as a public policy matter, although you could say there's an element of this with, at a 30,000 foot level in terms of seatbelts. You want less people to die. You want our medical system to be less taxed, et cetera, et cetera. And so you tell people to do seatbelts. The fact is, this is not a question of a vaccine being faulty. There is, because of the nature of human beings, say this again, there is no medical procedure. I don't care what you're going in for. You're going in to get your wisdom teeth removed. You're going in for a colonoscopy. It may be 99.999 safe, but somewhere down the line, someone has a complication. That isn't necessarily a function of a malpractice by a doctor or a dentist or whatever it is. You have a bizarre reaction to an anesthesia, or you had some type of heart palpitation, or whatever it is. And there is no medical procedure that is 100% safe. So from a public policy standpoint, you look at vaccines and you say, if we give this to 100% of the population, or we give it to as many people as we can, randomized, are the health outcomes for this group of people going to be better than without the vaccine? And if the answer is yes, and by a substantial amount, you give the vaccine. And by health outcomes, I'm talking about the spread of it, the potential for variants, the health of the people getting it. You give the vaccine. The reason why we don't have liability for vaccine makers, and it's not, you have liability if you're putting arsenic in there by mistake, if you manufacture it incorrectly. We saw that Johnson & Johnson factory get shut down. But the reason why we don't have the same liability for using the product in the way that it's meant to be used when it's developed is because from a public policy standpoint, we are making a decision as a society in the same way that we do with 55-mile-hour speed limits. What is our risk tolerance here? How do we measure it? And how do we deal with with the inevitable small amount of people we can't figure out who it's going to be, who might have a reaction to this. And we have them go to the vaccine court, and there's a lot of payments that go out there. Is that sufficient? Does that repay people? No. But you also have to look at the other side. If we have no vaccine, you've got hundreds of thousands of people dying.
Yeah.
And COVID's not going to give, any liability redress either. Let's go to the phones. I don't know how this guy's been holding. I snuck in. Calling from an 847 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Emma.
Yes.
Emma, it's Josh from Chicago. I need your help for tonight.
Yes.
Okay, Emma, because of the baseball season, my team's doing really well. They're not choking and booing their own fans.
Mm-hmm.
I have not prepared for fantasy football, and I have my draft tonight. I need your help.
Okay.
I know you're busy right now. I know you're at work.
Mm-hmm. That's true.
But I need your help.
Yes, Josh.
So.
High on the hill was a lonely goat herd.
Hi, Josh. I'm here too.
What was the relevance of that soundboard move?
It was just that was my inner monologue.
Oh.
Sorry, who is that? Is that your boss there?
Yeah. Well, for now.
For the time being.
If I usually go running back heavy. What should I? What should I?
Oh my God.
I need to ask you a few questions, and I will keep it quick for the people that hate this. One, do you know where you're picking?
No, we don't know until half hour before.
Half hour before, that sucks. I'm sorry. Two, is it half point PPR or full point?
I believe it's full point.
Full point. Okay. I think that there is a real opportunity for people who play fantasy football. I don't want, actually, I'm about to have my draft in a few days, and so maybe some TYT people are listening to this, but there's a real opportunity to take a receiver like in round one, I think, if you're at the back part of the round, because there's an overvaluing of some of these running backs right now in a league where they get injured pretty quickly, and like the consensus about take running backs early, it's kind of, the market is like it's overcorrected in a bit right now. So you need in modern fantasy, you need a high-end quarterback, you need a high-end tight end. So I would draft a tight end in the first 5 rounds, and drafting Kyle Pitts is a good way to go, for example. He's a good value. And also Kittle, who's for some reason falling to the back half of the 3rd round. And then just draft some running backs, and for the later rounds, get handcuffs, guys that will come in, like, Kareem Hunt's a great handcuff, or, Gus Edwards is now going to be that kind of guy. So just stack those guys on your bench, and then you can plug and play those. But having a guy like Devontae Adams or Tyreek Hill or Calvin Ridley, it's like, that's going to win you your league this year, in my view. So that's my hot take.
And don't draft Travis Etienne.
I definitely agree. I mean, I usually also wait till the later rounds to get a quarterback.
All right.
Right, but that's an overcorrection too. Do you see what I'm saying? Everyone's doing that now. So.
Show my strategy.
Yeah.
There you go.
Good luck, Josh. Thanks for the call.
All right. Thanks, sir.
Yeah. Appreciate hearing from you.
Mr. Seder.
There's a reason people don't know who Matthew Berry is outside of fantasy football podcasts. So it doesn't translate well outside of it.
Cedar's leg. Why are you talking about cohorts of people who haven't taken vaccines, making your own cohorts with your own random hypothesis? No, these are not, this is just from stuff that I have read. Isn't there a survey or studies you can quote? There are surveys and studies. I'm just doing the aggregate. I don't know that there's anybody out there who has any definitive numbers on any of these different cohorts, to be honest with you. And there's studies that have done various countries, wealthier countries, poorer countries. I'm just talking about what I read in terms of the United States. We can look at Gallup polling. I don't know that there's any way to really quantify. But as far as I've read, those are the major sort of like categories of people who are vaccine hesitant. Let's go another call. Calling from a 917 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hi, is this me?
Yes, it is you.
Oh, hey, it's Jake the teacher. How you doing?
Jake the teacher. What's on your mind, Jake?
Oh, wow. Yeah, I just came out of school for the first day, and, we had like a training that's before school starts in New York City, September 12th, with all students, fully reopening. And, I'm really scared. We have all of these strategies, and it's kind of like layering Swiss cheese on top of each other. But it's not the Swiss cheese that has like a little bit of holes in it. It's like the Swiss cheese that has really, really big holes. We have a vaccination mandate now. There's some other unions that are suing over this, but the teacher union is just kind of accepting it. And it means that a couple of teachers here and there, like in my school, we have one teacher that just walked away. She's taking leave, and we have to fill that position now with like just days to go before school starts. So, that's one thing. I mean, I feel good that I'm vaccinated and the rest of the staff is, but that's only one layer of the Swiss cheese. Kids 12 and under are not vaccinated, obviously, and the kids that are 12 and over are a very low vaccination rate. One, my understanding is Hochul is going to try and do a mask mandate throughout the state. And I'm not so sure about that vaccination rate for 12 and over. I mean, I guess it depends on where you are, but my understanding that's actually going up.
Nationally, it's half of 12 to 17-year-olds have had one shot.
I've had one shot.
The last I heard in New York City, it was like in the 40s. But
really?
That's short to climb. Yeah. The thing about Hochul's mandate is that there's going to be a lot of pushback in districts like Long Island and upstate and around the state. They're already planning, just like major pushback against that. So the school board's members there that are in charge of those districts are going to be on the hot seat because they're going to be asked to defy the mandate.
All I can tell you is this. I mean, and I don't blame you for being worried, but transmission in schools has been generally fairly low in communities where there's not a lot of transmission. And I think,
Yeah, that's all before Delta.
That's all before Delta. It's all before Delta.
The CDC has a.
Go ahead.
They have a model out. I'm sorry. Yeah, they have a. The CDC publishes different projections, and the one that they just published says that 75% of students 12 and under are going to have COVID within 3 months.
All right.
That is really pessimistic.
But understand, when they put out these projections, right, they do like 25. And so it spans the gamut. I mean, all I can tell you is this. Like, it's just the models, they put out models in January of last year. And this is David Wallace Wells told me this. They had put out, they did 27 models, I think it was. They run computer-generated models of where infection rates would be. 2 of the 27 said it would go down in February. And in fact, it had gone down in February. So look, you can look at these models. The really, what's going to tell you more is having all the teachers and all the adults and all the staff in the school vaccinated is going to be key. Because first off, children are not speaking as much as teachers are in these classrooms. And theoretically, and you're going to be able to keep windows open for the next like 2 or 3 months at the very least. and you know, you're going to have some measure of mask use, even if there's not a successful mandate in every school. And so, you know, I you know, my kid's going back to school full time. My high school student, she still doesn't know. I'm going to guess it's going to be hybrid just because they have 4,500 kids in her class, or not her class, her school. And so I think, you know, I just think that with the teachers vaccinated, teachers are going to be safer, and students are going to be safer. I think it's even, you know, even more so than if you had 25% more students vaccinated. I think having teachers vaccinated and staff vaccinated is going to be the big thing, right? Because
well, yeah, students have to be vaccinated too, and the 12-year-olds and under can't get vaccinated now. I mean, yeah, so it's one layer. The other thing is the mask, and I just came from a meeting. We had 30 plus teachers in a room, and the masking was not great. They were using cheap masks and cloth masks, and they're eating bagels and stuff. And you know, this is the adults. Bagels. Imagine what the kids are going to be like. You know, there's a guy with a bushy beard, and the mask is like floating above the beard. So you know, so that's another layer of Swiss cheese. And have you heard the testing policy in New York City?
No.
With the testing policy, so if you're vaccinated, you don't need to get tested at all. And then if you're not vaccinated, you have to have a consent form. And so the rates of completing the consent form to get tested are very low. So they're going to test 10% of the unvaccinated kids with consent forms every other week. Yeah. And so it's a very low sample, you know, and it could be a lot higher. Other districts are doing much more testing, and that will you know, that could catch a lot more cases and prevent, you know, prevent spread before kids before kids are symptomatic. So you know, the testing is another layer, and then the quarantining is very shoddy. They're not going to quarantine. You don't have to quarantine if you're vaccinated, and if you're unvaccinated, you don't have to quarantine if you're masked.
What?
And, you know, yeah. I mean, for 12 and under,
if you test positive, you don't have to quarantine.
If you're in contact, you don't have to quarantine.
Yeah, if you have a mask.
But for 12 and under, it's a little bit safer. They're saying for kids 12 and under, if there's one case in the classroom, the whole class is quarantined. But for kids 12 and over, you don't have to quarantine, and teachers don't have to quarantine if they're vaccinated. I mean, to me, if you're exposed, you got to get tested, and you should isolate. It's just common sense. And so this is where they're trying to err on the side of keeping schools open.
Right.
And because otherwise there'll just be so many holes, you know, there'll be so many quarantines. And, you know, the mayor is really trying to avoid remote learning, you know, any way he can. And, you know, obviously if you're in quarantine, you're going to have to do remote learning. And that's what, you know, he has announced that there's not going to be any remote learning, and he's really stubborn and sticking to that. I know in the Bronx, there's parents that are going to be doing sick outs. They're not going to send their kids in protest. I don't know how many, but that was already on a radio show. So yeah, you know, the New York City is going to be a very big experiment again on the 12th. And to all my teacher friends out there, I know a lot of teachers listen to the show. You know, this is different. You got to wear better masks, and you got to teach all the kids how to mask up. And, you know, those two air purifiers that are in the room, they are so freaking noisy. You can't have them on the highest settings at all. But, you know, they have to be set up. You know, people are setting them right next to each other. And all that does is just transfer air.
No, yeah, that's got to be, they've got to understand, they've got to put them they've got to put them on the sides of the classroom to pull it away from people. I mean,
so the teachers need training. The teachers need training first. You know, we have to open up windows. My room has no ventilation, no mechanical ventilation. So we have to open up windows. But they say, you know, you shouldn't open up two windows side by side either. That's just going to, you know, go in and out. You got to do it, you know, as
Cross
far apart
ventilation.
as right, and you have to have, you know, the door open as well. And if you have two doors, you have to have them both open.
It's just insane that
And-
you have
and
to
yet-
deal with this shit.
Yeah, there should be. I mean, there should have been packets and videos and shit like this. But
Right, and there's still time for that. But all they're telling us, you know what they told us today, is that we have to get those standardized test scores up 5%. That's their main, you know, message to the teachers on the first day.
Oh my God. All right, dude. Well, hang in there and call back in with an update.
You got it, man.
Appreciate
Take care,
you.
guys.
All right, folks. We are. Time is short. Should we play this Louis Gohmert thing or?
Yes.
Oh, this guy's what a.
This guy's an idiot. I don't know if we're breaking news here, but Gohmert's not bright.
That's a bold statement, Emma.
Yeah, I shouldn't besmirch him so, but maybe people can watch the video and make their own conclusions.
Here's Louis Gohmert talking about what kind of lunatic doctor he has and getting him on all sorts of different. Somebody wrote in about that the fluvoxamine, which is that SSRI. It basically is an anti-inflammatory. Is the easiest. It functions as an anti-inflammatory. It is one of the treatments that they use along with other treatments that has had maybe 35 to 50% in this bigger trial in keeping people from being, you know, getting severe COVID if they took it quick enough. I mean, so it's just like a therapy that's out there. It doesn't in any way inhibit you from getting it. It is like, you know, 30 or 50%. I certainly wouldn't want to, you know, stake my life on a gun that only has, you know, 3 bullets and out of 6 chambers. No, thank you. But to get out there and say this stuff about ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine at this point, it's just like
well, that's how the style now.
Honestly, you
is just
should be arrested for doing this. But I know that's super authoritarian. Here's Louis Gohmert.
Oh, you mean
speaking to students.
I am so thrilled that Donald Trump was president.
Pause it for
when
1
we
second.
needed.
Have to talk about the RSBN network. What does that stand for? Do we know what that's?
Right Side Broadcasting Network.
Yeah, they're in partnership with Mike Lindell, it seems.
They basically like got their bones by just broadcasting all of Trump's rallies in 2016 on YouTube.
It's just unbelievable, like how much the MyPillow coupon codes permeate our society, the dumbest parts of our society. But here, continue.
That Donald Trump was president when we needed vaccine. And he got the government out of the way enough so they could develop some vaccine very quickly.
Pause it for 1 second. All right.
If this guy.
Well, pause it. So and watch out for that black bar you got across the screen there, Bradley. To be clear, what Gohmert's doing now is he is trying to thread the needle between, like, yes, it was Donald Trump who developed the vaccines, but that doesn't mean you should necessarily take the vaccines now. So he's doing a lot of work here.
Right.
He's got. I mean, talk about it. He's dealing with nuance, and also he's lying about. These companies got billions of dollars and basically risk-free were basically out there developing
check
the yes.
from the government. So it's quite the opposite of what he's saying.
I'm getting out of your way by underwriting all of your activities.
Exactly.
There's never been an undertaking like this where the government has been more involved at the direction of Donald Trump.
And we should also say the government's also been, you know, involved in like making sure that the thing is safe and efficacious. And
well, you can't trust that.
That part you can't. All right, so go back a little bit and let's listen to Louis. Also, let's put that MyPillow coupon code back up there too.
You can't miss it. So
I am so thrilled that Donald Trump was president when we needed vaccine. And he got the government out of the way enough so they could develop some vaccine very quickly. If this guy that's president now had been president last year, this country had been in even more trouble than it is now. And he's only been there about 8 months. But he got government out of the way so it could be developed quickly. The trouble is, these vaccines were only approved for emergency use. Now you have Pfizer that's been approved, but there's so much long term they don't know.
Well, pause it.
And now that the pandemic is...
But like, how does he just push away the Pfizer getting the full approval?
Well, there's also another problem here where it's like saying like the government got out of the way, but now the government's failing to establish whether it's safe.
Yeah, we need more regulatory standards. Sounds like big government to me, Louis Gohmert. But like also at the same time though, it did give Pfizer the full approval, so why isn't, well, I mean, I'm sure he's going to explain.
We're trying to put a rationality to this, and really all it is there's just enough for people to hang their hat on that is a pablum and emotional so that they can say,
yes,
even though Donald Trump created these vaccines almost personally, they're not safe under Biden. Good.
Now that the pandemic is under more control, we need to get back to our freedom of saying, look, here's my pre-existing conditions. Let's talk about which one I should take, if I should even take one. And let me tell you,
imaginary
the more
doctor that many people don't have.
I don't know if y'all saw, but a month after President Trump left office, the American Journal of Medicine came out with a great article that they had discovered a regimen of medication that when taken together early in COVID, that you may have heard of it, hydroxychloroquine, ivermectin, a Z-Pack, azithromycin, and Dr. Bartlett from Midland recommends a steroid nebulizer.
Let's go!
Hannity called me every day for 7 days after I was tested positive for it, make sure I had what I needed. I mean, that's a nice guy. That's a friend. And Dr. Bartlett called me 2 or 3 days, make sure I was doing the nebulizer. Apparently, according to him, the steroid helps coat the alveoli cells, as I understand it, and it makes it harder for the COVID virus to infect them.
You know what also does that is the mRNA vaccine that's quite literally designed for your body to mitigate the worst effects of COVID and potentially prevent you from getting infected in the first place.
I feel like I went out there and I really helped the children today. Taught them.
Hydroxychloroquine, ivermectin.
If you are lucky enough to be a congressman with a bunch of Looney Tune friends, they're going to call you and throw the whole kitchen sink at you. But don't take the vaccine unless you've had a long discourse, children, with your doctors. Go and have a long discourse with your doctors that many of you don't have.
Yeah.
And
but I can afford
be
the
a wise
quackiest
consumer.
doctor.
This is like buying a stereo.
Don't you all have a doctor friend that you can
stereos.
call up and he'll just give you whatever you want because he's as cracked out as I am?
Unbelievable.
But like there are doctors. There are a lot of bad doctors. There are bad doctors who have weird political leanings, who are anti-vax too. That's just
without a doubt.
Yeah, and so you can find them. But the talk to your doctor thing, first of all, like Gohmert's not an expert, but he's opining on all of these, things that are supposed to be personal for his own health, right? He's saying you could just do all these things, but I thought like the vaccine was a personal decision. His cocktail of hydroxychloroquine, ivermectin, Z-Pack, steroid nebulizer should probably just be for him. But like if you can get a doctor, if you're a conservative that's seeking out a doctor who's anti-vax, you can find them. But for most people, just saying go to the doctor and consult them about your vaccine, about getting the vaccine, is such a weird classist American blind spot because most people can't go to the doctor for like a quick consultation about a free vaccine that hundreds of millions of people have already gotten and is proven to be safe.
There's a great Onion article about a guy who's done his own research, and he got 45,000 of his friends to do a double-blind study. I mean, it's unbelievable. All right, folks, we don't have time for any more phone calls. Apologies.
Oh, wow. We're
right up against it. I'm going to read a bunch of IMs and then get going. We'll have to save this Crowder video for tomorrow. MSNBC Cedar. Has there been any reporting you're aware of how long they anticipate for the vaccine to be approved for usage for children 12 and under? I just read that they're talking about like November-ish for perhaps approving it for children under 12. Jonathan Armstead, Sam, things have been heavy, but I'd be remiss if I didn't mention Ed Asner's passing. Dude was a great actor and voice actor, but was always on the right side of things, especially when it came to the death penalty, the Iraq War. He was a badass, and he'll be missed. It's true.
Had a good socialism tweet.
Yep. Comrade Tony, good afternoon, MR crew. My wife works in the administration at a nursing home, and apparently vax hesitancy is a giant problem against nursing staff. I know this very intimately. I've got issues with my parents in this regard. They're shorthanded as far as skilled care workers go, and now more of their nurses are being out of commission by COVID. What's the answer when the facility is afraid to implement a vax mandate because the nursing staff will quit, but at the same time they're being laid up with COVID, not to mention the harm it does to residents and the facility's reputation when their nurses are too goddamn dumb to get vaccinated? I have no answer for this. I am more deeply involved in this question than I care to discuss. But it is a real problem. It is a real problem. Between the 101 and the 5, check out the Aaron Collins YouTube channel about high quality masks. He's an aerosol expert and has so much vital information. I think everyone is looking for answers at this point. We're all out of our minds. The only way to cope is some form of delusion on having the answer. It's like the church inquisition during the plague. Liberals, GOP, MAGA, even the left, we're all a little bit in denial because it's hard to face our reality with climate change, COVID, late-stage capitalism. It's overwhelming. I think there's a lot of truth to that. You choose some type of orthodoxy when, the questions of the day become just too overwhelming. Train boy, it's like a lap belt is better than no seat belt, but a 3-point belt is better than just a lap belt. Yes. Rachel on fire. I work in the psych hospital for children. They have no idea of physical boundaries and cannot mask due to suicide risk. Hundreds of them tested positive for COVID over the past 1.5 years, and I never caught it. I was masked 100% of the time with a cloth mask or N95 at times. They were never masked. So yes, I trust masks to prevent infection. Got vaccinated in January. There you go. Come shower with Crowder. Other listeners have brought up The Vanguard. It's a relatively small podcast. They've had everyone on from Door to Ryan Grimmon. Can you reach out to them? Their audience is more on the Door side of the left. And I think it'd be one way to speak to Door's audience. Their show gets clipped and shared by a lot of people when someone big comes on. I mean, I imagine I'm happy to go on.
I don't know. Jimmy Dore got really mad at them for having Ryan Grimm on.
Oh, so you think they'd be afraid?
So I don't know. Maybe Dore's a disciplinarian.
Yeah.
Well, if they're not afraid to have me on, I'd be happy to come on. Let's put it that way. If they're gonna get in trouble with Uncle Jimmy, because we know what happens when Uncle Jimmy gets into the bottle a little bit, and you don't want to be around him. But if they're not afraid of getting in trouble with their dad, I'll happy to go on.
To be fair, they defended themselves pretty well.
Okay,
for the 5 minutes I saw.
All right, good. Well, but I'm happy to go. I'm happy to go on.
Wait, is this the channel that does all the stuff?
Yeah, when I dunk on you.
The Twitter report.
What is it?
I don't know if they do I don't know
what
that is, but they do drama.
The Vanguard, you said?
Yep.
Oh yeah, they do drama, right?
What happened to Progressive Voice? Is he still?
Yeah, is that guy still doing stuff?
Who's that?
He's this guy. He was the OG YouTube drama guy.
Yeah.
Oh really?
Yeah, I don't know, but I'm happy to go on. I'm happy to go on all these shows. I mean, we get a bunch of requests, and I try and juggle them and do them as much as I can. Scoodle Moose, thank you for the birthday show far on Friday. Icing the cake. Husband Fernando is stoked. Delta Blues. Thoughts on another shutdown were to occur? Would you support the government only sending stimulus checks to people who have a record of being vaccinated or getting vaccinated during the shutdown? No. Because the idea is not like, here's your bonus. The idea is like, how do we prevent the spread of COVID? So you want stimulus checks to people who are unvaccinated.
This impulse to discipline anti-vaxxers in terms of not getting stimulus checks and denying them health care is not a good one. And we talked about this on the show at length because we had people call in and advocate for that. It is not like principled as being principled on the left. You don't deny healthcare to people and you support universal programs, especially in order to achieve broad health outcomes.
And it's not just a question of being principled. It's also just like, if the idea with a shutdown and a stimulus is not like, here's your, a bonus. It is to help the policy. You don't do stuff that's contrary to the policy because you're trying to punish people. That doesn't make any sense whatsoever.
Say you have an anti-vaxxer mom and like she has to shut down and she can't go to work and she has 3 children. We're not punishing the children for their parents not getting vaccinated.
But you also don't want her to go to work.
That too. Oh, yeah. Or if she can't, though, say it's a lockdown.
You need to make it possible. You need to encourage people to do that.
Yeah.
That's why, like saying you can't go to a concert unless you're vaccinated has the impact of like coercing them into getting if they want to see live music.
Or going to a restaurant.
Not giving them stimulus if they're unvaccinated, I think is bad because then they'll go out and work.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like they,
Right.
And then defeats the point of a shutdown. But I don't think there's going to be another shutdown. Will from Indiana. Weird how Kanye's new album drops, says the hurricane's coming through. Would be nice if he still had good politics.
I tried to listen to that shit. Jesus, I fool myself every time with this guy.
Whitey from Long Island.
Good again.
I try asking this question, but the DMs must be so flooded. Anyway, I've been really getting disillusioned following the Nina Turner loss. I'm starting to think our movement we worked so hard building during the Bernie campaign, it's all just gone because there's no air. Everyone seems to be lulled to sleep under Biden, like under Obama. Same abusive, murderous police roaming the streets, same Reaganomics, but no public outrage, no mass protests. I feel like I'm going insane. None of this should be the norm or acceptable. We should be rioting in the streets because I don't know what else to do. I mean, I'm not sure that's
things
the
ebb
reason
and flow. It doesn't. Not every moment is an inflection point.
Voting Dems in clearly hasn't helped us because we are letting some parliamentarian or filibuster block our majority. We're never going to get a larger portion of the Senate than we have now. So what do we
say that to the child tax credit, which is going to expand if we get this reconciliation package?
Oh yeah, I mean the real bottom line is, I mean the test is going to be whether or not we get $4 trillion worth of spending in the next 3 months. That's going to be the test.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think the simple point is it's necessary but not sufficient. And like, it's not like the idea that things were better under Trump, which is a slight implication by this because people were in the streets, I think fetishizes that street activity because I don't think it really like achieved as much.
You got to look at the material benefits that people have gotten. And again, yes, necessary but insufficient.
Right.
What needs to happen for Americans to realize they needed to be doing wildcat strikes and illegal strikes 50 years ago?
Organization. Like, that's the other thing is you get the frustration. People like just want a general strike to happen. It's like, okay, well, what unions do you have on board with that? Because like, if it's just going to be like, we need to message this better or persuade better through the media, we don't control the media.
Hadub. My sister's an ICU nurse in California. Her supervisor has not been vaccinated yet and has COVID before. He continued to come to work last week, even though his wife tested positive for COVID and led a skills day that all RNs were required to attend. He now is tested positive for COVID and exposed to every ICU nurse at the hospital. I mean, this is insanity. Fear City Chiropractic is literally founded on a story where it's a creator claimed to cure a man's blindness by pushing a bulging disc back into place. It's not as bad as it once was, but there's still a lot of quackery in it. The Machine. Wasn't the AMA formed to lobby against universal health care? I know that it did. I don't know if it was formed. I think maybe. The Machines. I never understood why people hate sports. Then I tuned into the Majority Report. Melancholy. Is diminished the new OK Boomer? Gee, thanks, Emma. What is that?
I don't even know. Did I?
Emma said the diminished audience.
Oh.
Oh.
Well, I mean, we don't know how. The audience probably hasn't diminished much.
I watched some TV. Stop the
from
meal.
The drop off of Peacock. Right.
All right, I guess 6 more. Stop the meal. I watched some TV for the first time in a while yesterday morning and saw half a dozen ads claiming the infrastructure bill was going to take Medicare away from seniors, that it makes the government can decide what drugs you're allowed to take. A lot of misinformation being pushed right now. A lot of unironic, keep your government hands off my Medicare energy. Speaking of which, Big Dick Cheney energy. I'm sure it's just a coincidence that so many right-wing hosts died of COVID during Sam's vacation. Kowalski, hello, Emma, Matt, MR Crew, and sun-kissed golden toned Sam. I think we are all ready to experience suns out, guns out, Seder cannons. Some regular caller whose name will not be mentioned thinks it won't happen. The big lie is what they're calling it. I don't know. Leftist poggers. Lounge Lizard Sam Seder. Hey, Sam, will you ever have John Lurie on for the ostensibly fun half? I was just telling everybody in here how excited I was to find out that John Lurie and I went to the same high school. And everybody looked at me like, well, what are you talking about? Who's that? Like they have more knowledge of my high school than they do John Lurie, apparently. Padam, Emma's been holding a grudge for months against those folks who cheered up nightly for the healthcare workers. What's up with bringing that up when discussing available hospital beds versus medical personnel?
Yeah, I do hold a grudge.
Why?
I don't know.
Emma has a big problem with virtue signaling.
I do. Thank you. I don't like performative stuff like that. It's bring it back to the yard signs. Sorry. It's just something that grinds my gears.
Jimmy Doris Brainworms. I'm very worried about Jimmy taking ivermectin for my own sake. Also, when will Timba on Toast be on the program? Oh, we should have that guy on too.
Good point.
Can we put him on the list?
Yeah.
Obsta Hill or dance? Which beach, Sam? Not Muscle Beach. In advance of the big repeal, I was doing a lot of, I was spending a lot more time on arms than legs. Let's put it that way during this past week. Philly Special. Emma, have you heard about Mike Tagliari of Fantasy Pros? He's on a ventilator with COVID. Thankfully, he did say on Twitter that he was vaccinated. Hopefully, that gives him an edge.
I don't know who that is, but I'm so sorry to hear that.
Kid tested, Politburo approved. I think it's clear that the point of this society is to give the option, freedom of having or not the power supplied to our cities. Power grids for those who want it. Bear at Home 2. Welcome back, Sam. Hope you had fun. Can you do more sports and less fantasy socialism? New Wrangler. You're right about no medical procedure being 100% safe, even if it's 99.99 safe. David Feldman, the lefty from way back, said on a show that his first prostate exam was done without lube, and it made him scream from the top of his lungs in pain. Oh. I really didn't need that.
So we need to have Feldman on again soon.
Talk about that. To give his medical opinion.
Mm-hmm.
Emma's Tan, or Emma Stan. Why is Emma playing second fiddle to this Sam guy? I'm so confused. 2 more. The critique-based theory. Oh, great. The next anti-vax fad will be megadoses of anything that says steroid in the ingredients. Sigh. And the final I am of the day. Bingo Mosquito. P.S. I still listen to Mike Malloy. Hoo boy. He is unfiltered and unafraid. Recommend for a future Casual Friday. Interesting. Mike was going to come up here actually to visit and do a meet and greet, but then COVID hit. All right, folks. See you tomorrow.
It might take all the strength I got to get to where I want, but I know somehow I'm gonna get there.